Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, September 25th, 2013 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda is a request to continue under a determination of applicability. Pinecrest Beach Improvement Association, Lakeshore Drive North, map 2204026000A, East Falmouth, for permission to open a 4-foot path in the existing 10-foot right-of-way for access to Jenkins Pond and to install a split rail fence. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until October 9th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is to continue us to October 9th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Request to continue under a notice of intent. Edwin Lyon, 20 Swift Street, West Falmouth, for permission to pump, fill, remove existing cesspools, remove cedar trees and naturally vegetated buffer, uncover a 4-inch diameter waste pipe for connection, install an enviroseptic leaching system, construct a unilock retaining wall around the leach system, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until October 23rd. Thank you, Courtney.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the table for a continuance. Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table to continue this hearing, 20 Swift Street, to October 23rd, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Request for determination of applicability. Robert Lamkin, 155 Meadow Neck Road, Wacoit, for permission to vista prune.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved. Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the?
Could you explain what she just said?
I will. And even if there were no questions, I was going to say,
Thank you.
if this is new to you, a negative determination means you don't have to file a notice of intent. You can go ahead with the work that you've agreed with.
That's great to do. It's great news.
You do
Yeah.
need to work with Mark and do it in accordance with the regulations.
We're all set.
Okay.
Okay, so, great.
And an on-site meeting you scheduled with Mark and the arborist to review the flagged areas and all of that.
flagged,
Okay.
everything's done.
All
Yeah,
right.
so negative sounds a little,
It sounds a little.
it makes you a little nervous,
It does make you a little-
but it's good for RDA.
All right, great, thank you.
Court.
Yeah, just to amplify that, it's, an RDA determines or decides whether or not the regulations and the state law applies in a significant enough way in order to cause us to have a higher level of permitting. So when you say that it has a negative impact, it says it's not, the impact is so minimal that therefore it's okay. So a yes is no.
It's good to know.
Well, that's how Courtney
a
puts
no
it.
is
I
yes,
just say a
it's a-
negative determination means you can go ahead with what you're going to do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we haven't voted yet, though.
We have both, okay.
Yeah, you never know what the vote might be. Okay, so motion on the table is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination. See, now you have to wait and see. All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you very much.
Now you can work with Mark.
You got it.
Work with Mark.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Continued request for determination of applicability. Pinecrest Beach Improvement Association, Lakeshore Drive North, East Falmouth, for permission to open up a 4-foot path. This sounds familiar.
This is continued.
Oh, it's
You just
continued.
continued this.
That's why it sounds familiar. Okay, Heinz Penzance Point Realty Trust, 160 Penzance Point, Woods Hole, for permission to conduct repairs to the existing seawall that include cleaning, grouting, and pointing of stone veneer, all work by hand.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has withdrawn the RDA request.
So no action.
No.
No action.
Okay. Request for hearings under notice of intent. Royal McGansett Nursing Home, care of James Mamery, 209 County Road, North Falmouth, for permission to remove the existing retaining wall and replace with a wood retaining wall, relocate and/or reconstruct 2 outbuildings, install native trees, shrubs, and ground cover, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I will save any of my comments until after Barbara's presentation.
Are you going to tell us what a notice of intent is?
A notice of intent?
Did you
No,
read
I'm not
that?
going to tell what a notice of intent is.
Oh, you-
No, read your
don't you- Or did you read that?
Oh, that aspect.
Yes.
All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the, thank you, Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening. Barbara Craft here with Warwick and Associates, representing the owners of the Royal Manhattan Nursing Home.
Is that a threat, Dan?
Nope.
No. Did you see what happened?
No.
Turn it around. Turn your thing around.
What we have is a situation which if you've been out there, you can see what the problem is. The Royal Manhattan, when it was first built, that structure was first built. It's built on a promontory that is on County Road, and there's a steep slope all around it. And that slope had installed several decades ago a wooden retaining wall down along the bottom of the wall, of the slope. The retaining wall is deteriorated, falling apart, and as a result, we're having erosion, loss of vegetation. I think if you look at this picture here of an abutting property owner's shed, you can see the trees just leaning out of the banking. So it is in desperate need of being properly shored up. So the proposal is to remove the existing wall. All of the existing vegetation on the banking will be removed, and a new wall will be installed. It's going to be a three-tiered wall. I believe you all have plans in your packet. Sorry for that. The new wall will be installed in 3 steps. The toe of the slope will be pulled back because it is eked out onto the abutting properties. So the toe of the slope will be pulled back so it's entirely on the Royal Manhattan's property, and the first wall will be installed. It will be pressure-treated lumber, pressure-treated pilings, and this wall will be lagged back with helical piers to keep it to acting as dead men. Once that lower level is put in, they'll step up, put another wall in, same way, pilings, sheathing, lagged in with the helical piers, and then the third wall at the top. All of this area here, which is now be bare, will all be replanted with appropriate plant material with the idea that we would reestablish a habitat community, but also to provide some aesthetic appeal to the abutters who look at this wall. So it'll be mostly evergreens. Could be something like junipers, bayberry, those types of things, but something that will be dense, evergreen, and have some habitat value and some screening value. The issue here is access. We have been working with the neighboring properties. You have a little paper there. There's a lot going on here. Part of the filing is also to replace a set of stone steps over here, which abut the Luca property on the plan. So that will be done from the upland area. But the other properties, the access for the construction equipment and the installation of this wall will be from the backyards of all of these other properties. That's the Carter property, Klein, and Hannon. In order to reach that,
Excuse me, gentlemen? Sorry, Barbara.
In order to get close enough to the base of the wall with the equipment in order to do the work, we're going to have to move this shed right here. It's in the backyard of the Klein property. That's not going to be an issue because next week I'm before you for a raise and rebuild for that house, so all that will be gone anyways. The Hannon property has a garage workshop in the back. We have talked, and Madeline is, Ms. Hannon is here, that garage will be lifted up off its foundation, moved out of the way, equipment will operate, and when the project is over, the garage will be put back on its foundation. Over here on Mr. Cotter's property, as you can see, there's a road that comes in between Klein and Cotter. That is an extension of River Way. So access to the backyards will be down River Way. The work goes on behind Mr. Cotter's property, and we are working with Mr. Cotter. We're going to have to probably remove some trees on his property, but these are ornamental trees that he's planted, and in our discussions, he would like to see that those trees are put back at the end of the project. On the Hannon property, there's some Norway maples that are right up against the banking. Those will have to come out, but we were going to work with Mrs. Hannon to install replacement trees, perhaps something like Tupelo, that would provide shade, would be more appropriate for the setting. So it's a rather complicated project in its logistical components, but it's dramatically necessary. I think if you went out there, you could see that. I would defer, this is John Queen. He's the structural engineer for the project. So if you have any, technical questions, feel free to direct them to him. And also we have some butters that are sort of participants in this project, that they may have some comments they'd like to share with you, or you may want to ask them some questions.
Okay. Thanks, Barbara. Jen?
Barbara, the only comment I have is we'll need written permission from those property owners to
Yes,
access their properties for the file.
yes.
Okay, that is, we're gonna do
That's
that before
required,
we can,
and-
issue an order.
I have spoken to at least Mrs. Hannon and Mr. Cotter, and I'm sure Mrs. Luca will provide that for your files, because I believe they're as anxious to have this work done as the owner of the nursing home.
Courtney?
I'll pass for the time being.
Mario?
No questions or comments. This would be for the structural engineer, if I may. You'd end up coming to the podium if I'm,
Sorry.
just identify yourself for the record, please.
John Queen, Structures Engineering, structural engineers, we designed the replacement for the wall here.
Thank you. I'm very confident about the design of this. I'm somewhat familiar with this type of installation. Do you have a timeline on how long from start to finish this will be?
Not really. We have a couple of contractors that we've been talking with as far as the logistics and how they're going to come in and how they're going to do it. And there's a couple of different options. So it depends a lot on their approach and everything. The area has to be grubbed and cleaned. We've talked about doing it in a phased operation from one end to the other, and that seems to be their approach anyhow. Clean it, drive the piles, and then put the lagging in, and then work your way down. And that seems to be the best approach, but we're not sure how long that's going to take.
My only concern with this, and I'm glad that you were talking about that, is phasing in. If we have a storm or such, where you're already attempting to stabilize and there's an unstable area, that would be my only concern, is that the site management is going to be crucial, not only to the butters, but for the nursing home as well. And site management is going to be very key on this. The eyes of the world will be upon you, and the contractors that are going to be here. It's put some ease on the abutters. As tight as this isn't impossible, and it's not something that should warrant a lot of concern. As long as they, with due diligence during the project, loose ends are not left open, I do not see a whole lot of issue with this. And as far as the plantings and the trees on the, thank you. This might go back to Barbara.
Okay.
The trees that you had discussed about, the ornamentals and going back,
Well,
are they
not so much.
transplant, are you,
No, what's there now, if you look, I can give you some pictures that might help.
thank you.
And see, what's there now is a lot of invasives, so we're not dealing with a lot of, we would like to use evergreens such as junipers, like I said. One of the concerns is to provide at the upper level some screening. There are some mature trees, there, large saplings, and it provides somewhat of a screen from the people below up to the nursing home. And at the upper level, we don't want to plant trees in the wall, in the tiers, but along the parking lot edge to put something, ideally probably arborvitae, even though red cedar would be better, but an arborvitae would be thinner, more easily transformed into a fence, into a hedge, and not as bulky as a red cedar can be. But I would I'm working now with CMS to come up with a plan, and I'm hoping that it's a plan that we could show to each abutter and to staff to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
Barbara, I have a quick question. Where's your staging area again?
The staging area is going to be in the yards, and,
In the property owner's yards?
yeah.
Okay. Definitely
One of the
need-
things, I met with Gilmore Construction and with John, and what you should know is, on the little pictures I gave you, the house that has the K on it, you have just recently given Jack Lander's colleague
Right.
permission to tear that down.
Yep.
Mrs. Hannon, Klein's, like I said, I'll be in next week to tear that down. And across the street, you just gave a permit for Crowley's to build. So there's going to be a lot of activity down there. Because of the location of the septic systems, Klein's isn't a concern, but certainly the irrigation system and those types of things on Mr. Cotter, Mrs. Hannon, Mr. Gilmore said that they would be putting down steel plates in order to minimize and prevent any damage to existing mechanical systems and lawns.
Anything else, Jen?
Pine Bank a private road?
Pine Bank and Riverway are private roads.
I need those written permission
The written
before I
permissions,
can
are
even
y'all hearing that?
consider closing this.
At some point, they're going to want from you as the abutters,
Before we close. You
Before we
probably didn't hear
close.
that part.
before you close. Well, that's all right, we don't have a contractor picked
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
so.
it's written in the regs, I have to
No,
have
that's-
them. Especially if you're talking about staging and plating their yards and
Yeah.
putting material in their yards.
No,
Those of you who are abutters, who will be writing these permission,
You can get
I
them
would
to me
like
next
you
week.
to actually put the language in as to what you're giving permission to do. But Barbara can give you a copy of the notice, and so if you can put in that you're giving permission to whatever it is, because that's what I was sitting reading that to Jen, saying, I didn't see any permission slips, do they know that? I mean, and I know you do know, because you're here and you didn't go, what? They're gonna take my shed down? But,
No, we know.
yeah, but we need it written.
But what I was gonna do was write a note,
I'll tell you, you can come up and tell us in a minute. Thank you.
or Barbara knows.
Well,
You can tell us too, but in a minute.
when they're through picking my brains, they'll let you.
Mike?
To the structural engineer,
Yes.
you have this riprap drainage way
Excuse me, we have
on the,
Black thing there, yes.
the stone spillway.
yeah. That takes runoff from where?
That takes some runoff from the parking area and the fire lane and everything, and that's an existing, and we're not gonna disturb that, we're gonna maintain that.
The wall, the existing cribbing extends to the north of that. How is that going to be addressed?
What we're doing is we're running a set of 3 rows of the piles of the lag all the way down
You're
to the spillway,
the-
and then on the other side of the spillway.
So what happens at the lower edge of that spillway, which is now cribbing?
That's gonna be maintained. We're only coming up and retaining the bank in this area up to the spillway, and we're just gonna maintain the existing spillway in the condition that it's
The
in.
north side of that bank is cribbing. If you stand below that spillway and look up at it,
It's there now.
Yeah.
Wall.
But he's asking what's it gonna be at the end?
when you're finished. If you stand at the bottom of that spillway and look up,
Yeah,
the stone stops, and there is wood cribbing below it.
Sort of supporting the base of the,
Yes. What
Supporting
happens
the
there?
well, we're coming right up with the new piles and the new lagging, right up to the cribbing. We're not gonna touch that existing spillway and that cribbing and everything down there, unless it's necessary, but we didn't want to disturb that.
Well, there's 2 issues that come up to me. First is you're taking runoff from the property and spilling it down into another person's property.
Well, that's existing condition in there now.
But when you're finished with this, you're gonna have old cribbing at the base with this stone coming down to it. As you stand there and look at it, you're not, do you think that old cribbing is going to
I think he
stay
said,
there?
do you think this is gonna exist? Maybe while you're doing this project, you should replace that.
Well, we
That's
can
what he said.
evaluate that and see if that needs to be replaced. We could either replace the cribbing, or we could extend the stone spillway, but that really wasn't
You're just
part of
standing looking
retaining.
at it, I'm concerned that someplace in the not distant future, you're gonna lose that.
Okay, well, we can
All right.
evaluate that, certainly. That was kind of out of our scope as far as the runoff. We didn't want to interfere with any runoff. We just want to retain the bank from eroding and everything. And if that's a
I
concern,
appreciate that, but
we'll evaluate it.
I'm concerned that the soil doesn't know that you're not concerned about.
Well,
That's
we
that's
could,
the point.
We could extend that, we could extend the lower wall.
Yeah, just take a look at it. and
Replace that, yeah.
Stand there and look at it and be sure that
Extend the
you're
lower wall.
comfortable. The last issue is just looking at the whole slope in its totality, not individual piles, not individual sections. Did you look at global stability? I'm concerned that the failure circle, your lower anchors are within the slip circle. Have you looked at global stability? And if not, will you?
Yeah, well, we've looked at the stability of the bank, okay?
Uh-huh.
And we feel that the driven piles with the lagging and everything are going to be, and they're also going to be restrained at the top by the helical piers that are going to be driven in there for the anchors, and that's basically all we've looked at.
I believe that any reasonable analysis would say that those piles with those anchors are fine. What I'm concerned about is you've got 2 levels with a slope that goes up, and global stability of that slope hasn't been looked at. And I'm just requesting that you take a look at the global stability and assure that it's okay.
It is going to be regraded so that it's a lot more stable, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's okay, but if you just take a failure plane and run it through, I can see it going through outside the lower anchor.
Well, it would not be outside the lower anchor. The anchors will be driven all the way back beyond that line, that slope stabilization line, into solid material. And
I'm just going by your cross-section, sir.
yeah, okay, well, that's somewhat...
If you're happy with it, you're the structural
Well,
engineer.
the cross-sections are pictorial. They show the anchors coming in, and it's kind of like just a picture of how deep they have to go. We have to drill those anchors in until we get past that line of stability of the global slope there, okay? And get into solid material beyond that. So there will be any kind of shear plane that's in that slope will be retained by the helical piers. It'll be well beyond that shear plane that we have in there to retain that wall.
Looking at what you're describing as, on the cross-sections, you're now describing as not trying to be cruel, but as cartoons, because the length of the anchor isn't set. That doesn't seem to be true.
Well, in order to get that anchor back and get the proper anchorage, it's a matter of when they drill those anchors in, they have to meet a certain resistance and a certain capacity of restraint. And in order to do that, they have to get back into firm material and not loose material, and it's going to be well beyond that line of slope stability.
Sir, I think we have engineers and people who built projects this size.
Yep.
And so, for me, this was fine. I got the idea of what you were going to do. But I think if you could explain the process and maybe give another drawing, that would be helpful.
If you could detail the criteria of the depth of the anchors, and you'll take care of it.
Okay. Yeah, we have notes in there for as far as the helical piers and things like that, and they have to be driven. What we have is the person that's going to be doing this is probably going to be like a subcontractor, a specialist in driving these. He has to submit his credentials, his requirements. He has to submit the type of piers and the capacity of the piers. And then when he gets in there to do it, he has to come in there and he has to give us the torque values and the lengths of every one of these helical piers so that we know that they're embedded properly in the good solid ground and everything. But I can elaborate that in a lot more detail for you, on the drawings if you would like some more information on that.
My interest is in seeing that the slope stays stable, and if global stability has been addressed, I'm happy.
Okay.
Which it
I
sounds
don't-
like
I don't,
it sounds
I
like
don't
it has.
need more than that. I'm saying what you have submitted doesn't address that.
Okay.
So if you're happy as the engineer,
I am, but I will.
I'm happy.
But I will address that and I will provide information as far
Okay,
as.
thank you.
As far as
I
that.
understand what you're asking. I mean, I would never have looked at this and asked that question, but as soon as you start, I
Well,
understand it. But if he's,
we're all interested in this slope stability for sure, so.
right, and if he's interested that
Be surprised what I've seen.
what you've said, and if it's detailed in here, that your contractor will be doing that.
Yes.
I mean,
That-
obviously, that's the key
All
part
that
of the
information
project.
has to be submitted.
We
and
don't
it's
want
gonna
that
be
slope to
certified.
collapse.
It'll be monitored to make sure that somebody's not just gonna come in and put something in there without knowing exactly the depth, exactly the torque, exactly the potential capacity of those anchors and everything. It's in this solid material that it's not gonna fail, so that'll be
Yeah.
done.
Okay,
Thank you.
Tommy,
No questions, thank you.
Court.
Yeah, anyone watching this, it's a rather arcane discussion about some technical aspects of this slope and controlling it. But at the bottom line, which is why Mike is a benefit to this commission and why he brings a lot to the table, is that the bottom line is that we both, you, the applicant, and us, have a major stake and major concern that this thing works right. Because for it not to work right would be, have a major environmental
The people in the audience
issue.
have a major concern about that.
So it's important that as members of this commission, that we insist that it gets done right. And that's the whole issue. It's not to make more work for you. It's we all have a common goal here.
Well, just to follow on what John said, I do know in another project, when the person installing like the helicals with the torque meter, I mean, they keep logs, you know. This number was put in, and this was the torque number, so there'll be a record and there'll be a log, and there is no universal, they'll all go to this torque, they'll all go to this point, each one will be.
It isn't as neat and clean as that diagram.
It's not as neat and clean in that, everyone is sort of an individual.
Some are longer, depending
Yes.
on the conditions that it meets.
And could I just pick up one quick thing that, that Mike brought up about the drainage? That swale is there, it functions fine, it seems to be it's going to function. I'm hoping that in the course of this being built, that I would like to divert some of the water that may go to that swale and use it as sort of a passive irrigation of all the plant material. I think it's in keeping with DEP's interest in LIDs, and it's not wasting the water, and it beats the heck out of putting in catch basins or anything like that. If I can use that small amount of runoff that comes from that area and use it to keep our plant materials well hydrated.
And it'll also
It'll also filter
filter whatever
It'll
is in
filter, it's a
that.
great filter, and so I would like to sort of,
Looking at the whole slope there, I agree with you. It seems to be working okay.
yes,
The cribbing below it seems to be.
a little decrepit.
Yeah, exactly. And so not to fix that at the time, the rest is, just seems
Yeah.
odd. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I haven't had any questions yet, or I've had a lot to say, but no question. So it gets back to the point that you made, and that is with the staging of this, my biggest concern is laying bare some slope and having the kind of rainstorms that we've had in the last couple of months where you have 4 inches in 24 hours. So, you know, obviously, this is something you're gonna have to work at and talk with staff as to how you're, you know, staging or working along. I mean, there's a lot of projects that roll like that. But also, I think you're gonna have to think about how you want to stabilize the new slopes and so forth. I didn't really, you know, I know you're gonna vegetate them, but are you gonna put jute mat down first?
Obviously, we're gonna, I have talked with, again, with CMS, and I would like to see it either tedded with straw, which is works very well, or just some jute matting with, you know, interwoven with straw. Put it down there, because we're not gonna be able to do any serious planting until late winter, or, early spring. So if this is going to be done during the winter months, the idea was in 50-foot increments. There's gonna be a period of time where there's gonna be no vegetation there, as you say, and we have to, you know, mat it up.
Yeah, so if you just want to give us a paragraph. as to-
Sure, I will do
as to
that.
how you're going to do that.
Certainly.
And my other comment was, in places where there are Norway maples, I understand why you don't want them, although.
Well, I want them,
although-
I love Norway maples.
Well, if
Just
everybody
you
notices,
people don't.
those are the prettiest, well, they're the prettiest trees right now. They're the only ones that are bright orange and red. But I'm wondering if you can talk with Jen about this too, replace some of them with oaks.
I would like to replace them with whatever Mrs. Hannon would like to have. And she, if she would like to have oaks, I mean, I'm not gonna come
Well,
in there
the-
with magnolias, but I
Well,
mean,
that-
I'd like to give her something that's going to afford her aesthetically and shade-wise what she would like to have.
And our native trees.
So are tupelos.
No, I know, I know that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it, but,
Yeah.
it's everyone is being so helpful and cooperative and has contributed so much to this project and the planning for several months that I want to make sure that when Mrs. Hannon looks out there, she's happy with her trees.
Yeah, well, and I don't think anybody in the room would disagree that this is a project that needs to be done,
Yes.
should be done sooner rather than later, and it's going to be a benefit to the people up above,
Yes.
those of you who live on Pine Bank and Pine Bank, so,
Yeah, and there are some areas where, we're going to remove, that aren't really eroding, aren't big things, where there's a lot of knotweed and as adjacent up to Mrs. Lucas' property. And, that's part of what we're going to do, remove the knotweed and put in native shrubs. And, so it's going to be much nicer than it is now.
right, which is good. Now, well, let me ask if there are any other questions. We'll take some testimony, but the letters that Jen is referring to, Barbara knows what we need, and she can help you, show you the phrases that should be in them. And we need those letters before we can move on, so maybe you could, well, I mean, maybe you could. Barbara would be happy to
I would
coordinate
be happy to help facilitate those.
Draft something for signature.
Yeah, this may not, there may be other letters, there will be agreements between the abutters and the owners of Royal Megansett, but these will be letters that will
Allow
cover
the
your
project to
interests.
go forward as far as easements.
Right, that's as
between
far as our, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
those letters may have to be, well, I mean, our letters need to have a
I need
legal
to list in
basis,
your
but it's a
letter
little bit
everything that's
different.
going to be done,
Right.
correct?
Would you like, let's put a continuance date on, and then we can open it up if people want to make comments.
I would like to see, I would need to ask everyone here how long they think it would take to get those letters. I mean, I'd like just as soon come back in well, when am I coming, next week? Next week,
Are you coming next week, Barbara?
yeah, for the tear down
The
across next
second?
door,
You're coming the second?
yes.
Yeah, for Klein.
I think it's the second.
To the 2nd or the 9th, Barbara, it's up to you.
Well, if I'm coming on the 2nd, if I don't have them, then I'll just have to bump it to the 9th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion on behalf of the applicant for the purpose of gaining the letters for the file
And a few clarifications.
and a few clarifications, thank you. Move this to continuance on 10/2/13.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table for the continuance. Now, are there any questions from the audience? Okay.
I'm Mr. Cotter. I bought the property in 1981 from my father. He bought it in the early 40s. Both my mother and my father have been down there, or have been down there, since the early 1915s. And my grandchildren are fifth-generation Cotters. I'm worried about a couple of things. First of all, I want the project done. I approached the owners and their people 8 years ago about this because the trees were going sideways, not up, and it was coming onto my driveway. Mr. Mamry didn't know anything about it at that time, so, but I want to do it, but I don't want to cause too much trouble. I'm only worried about what the property is going to look like when it's finished. I'd like it to look like it does now or better, okay? What I've heard tonight is very encouraging, and I like the question from Mr. Powers and Mr. Corvo and Mr. Bird, and I didn't realize that that's what this was going to entail. I'm also engaging council to drop an access responsibility letter, which is going to be signed by the contractor, the owner, and any people who live down there, and Mrs. Hannon's here and some others. In case there's a problem, I mean, you talk about, I didn't even think of that, if there's a storm during the winter, that could be a big problem.
We think about storms a lot.
Yeah, you think it doesn't snow down here, but it does. So, you know, I'm encouraged by what I heard tonight, but I want to be very careful that any liability or responsibility is not on me. They're going to be big time on my property. There's going to be heavy equipment down there. I'm actually in trouble on 3 sides because the new house by Mr. Crowley is in front of me. The house to the side of me on Riverview, okay, is going to be new, so that's going to be knocked down. And all the trucks are going to come down there. And I understand there have been some trucks already that have come down here. So it's going to be a very active area, and I hope it's all done before May, if you will. But as long as it looks like it does now or better, I'm all for it. And I
You recognize it takes a little while for these
I understand
plant communities to kind of mature and
No, I
Look
understand
really
that.
pretty,
That's
but-
why I'm here tonight. I
Yeah.
wanted to see what the process was like. And as I said, I'm far more encouraged than I thought I was going to be. So thank you for your attention, and I'll make sure that letter gets to you as soon as I can do it.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes. You have to come up and tell us who you are.
Rosemary Mortimer, 219 County, but I've also been asked by the Cascadian family who lives on Pine Bank to ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question I have is a general question. That is, I understand you're taking out old railroad ties, which are wooden, but you're now putting pressure-treated wood in. Why wood and not something that's going to last forever? I guess that's just a...
We're not doing anything, the applicant is.
I know.
We're going to here's the applicant's engineer, and he'll be happy to answer that question for you.
As I sat here, I thought, that doesn't make sense to me.
These pressure-treated piles are the same piles that they're putting now in marinas and out in docks and things. And those pressure-treated piles, they'll last a minimum of 50 years to 100 years, even in a marine environment. They're very, have a lot more longevity. Actually, even more so than concrete, because concrete will deteriorate over a period of time with stresses and water and deterioration and rusting and things. So, the piles, you won't have to worry about the longevity of the piles in there. It has a lot of strength, and they're all being tied back into the earth. So structurally, this is going to last for a long time.
I just don't know how long those railroad ties were there before. That's why, I wonder if it's going to be the same thing or longer.
They've partially deteriorated, but the problem is that they haven't been able to retain the weight and the sliding of the bank and everything like that because they're just structurally inadequate.
And the Cascadian family is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The Cascadian family are the family that had the fire on Pine Bank. And since then, Mr. Cascadian has had a massive heart attack, so that's why they're not here. But the question that is there going to be any impact onto their property? Because they do have a leaching field that if trucks come over on our right-of-way between our house and their house, it will be affected. Their leaching field could be affected.
Right. I believe you're not going over there.
People make mistakes, however. I've seen trucks go down the wrong way other times, and that is a concern I would have. And I'm certain I know Mr. Cascadian was very worried about his leaching field always. So if any truck would come in there by mistake, that could be an issue.
Barbara?
I would, to address that, I believe Mr. Cascadian is putting in a new septic system
Say he's getting a mounted system.
in conjunction with the rebuilding of his house. I can't, for some idiot that drives onto someone's lawn that he's not supposed to, but this project does not require any construction equipment to be on the Cascadian's property.
And what I would suggest, if you're worried about that, because now we're talking about at least 3 projects that are taking place down there.
Well, and there's going to be a
Well,
4th
in
with
addition
this.
to yours, you
To
might
theirs. Don't mind.
want to put construction fencing on your property, your friend's property, so that people don't make a mistake to get onto it.
And I think what's happening is this, their project, which is the K on your plans,
Right,
it's going on this winter as well.
right,
So
I
all
know
their trucks
that.
are gonna
But
be
she's
there too.
just afraid so many trucks are going in and out, people will get confused and go to the wrong place. But I think you have to clearly delineate what your space is.
Right, all right, I'll tell them that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay.
Court.
I want to follow up on a question on longevity. On the cross-section on drawing S3, you refer to the cross pieces between the poles as 6x6 or 6x12 timbers. And what is the rated, you don't talk about the rated life of those. Is it 40 years, ground contact? Because there's an awful lot of 6x6 pressure-treated stuff that doesn't last more than about 10 years.
Yeah, but these aren't like the landscape timbers that you'd have in your yard that say they're 20 years and they really don't even, you know.
No, I understand.
they last.
That's why I'm asking.
So they're
Because it's
either-
not on the plan, that's why.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think there is their CCA rating on there, I believe is .8 or 1.0, which has it has a minimum of like, I have to look that up before I state it, but they have an extreme longevity, and then we're using galvanized lag bolts to attach everything to the piles as well, too.
No, I'm fine with that, but I think when you submit your documentation, I want to know what the CCA ratings are.
Yeah, I
For
believe that's in there,
for
but I'll
ground contact.
check that,
If
and
it's not there, it'll come in with the letter that
Right.
Barbara will give us.
we'll put that on the drawing.
Because you could have these timber, the vertical piles could last for 100 years, but if the stuff in between gives out in 10, there aren't going to be a lot of happy people around.
This is, Courtney's point is the weakest link,
Is the,
he doesn't want the weakest link to be only 20 years. He wants it, if it's gonna be 50 years, he wants all those links to be 50 years
minimum
or better.
of 40 years.
Right.
Ground contact.
Okay,
One last comment, and I
Yeah.
will be brief. This falls on site management. It was real easy for me to say that in the beginning of this, and I've dealt with projects and neighborhoods and associations, site management. I'm gonna be in this
every
neighborhood.
one of these sites.
Yeah. This is something that,
We will all be
whoever your
visiting the
contractor
site
is-
this summer, these sites, this winter.
yeah, then, like I made mention, you're gonna have the eyes of the world. Whoever your contractor is gonna have to have a point man that's a good conduit for information for the abutters on a daily basis. And that's the only way that this will be smooth.
I know a good conduit person there.
I don't know what I'm looking at.
And the other thing is on these timbers, I'd like to have the species that you're going to use.
Southern yellow pine is on the spec.
Is it yellow pine, southern pine?
Yeah, it's on the
Okay,
spec,
I
on
didn't
the
see it.
third page.
Sorry, I stand corrected.
We have a motion and a second on the table for a continuance to October 2nd. This is the last chance for people to make a final comment. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much. We're all looking forward to seeing it, hoping that it looks prettier than it looks now, and certainly is more stable.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Courtney. I thought that was...
Now what I'm gonna have to, I know you're all excited because your project's done, but we still have a long meeting. So if anybody wants to talk, if you want to have a neighborhood meeting, go around the corner so we can't hear you.
These things are gonna be going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good luck, it'll be a good project.
I'm going to Florida in January.
Good for you. That's smart.
I figured that was a start.
Edward Lyon, 20 Swift Street, West Falmouth, has been continued to October 23rd. Town of Falmouth Beach Committee, care of Don Hoffer, Minot Beach, Minot Road, map 4220002, 000 East Falmouth, for permission to remove all hidden rocks, asphalt pilings, wooden structures, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I don't believe we have a DEP number, so it will need to be continued. And Don, do you have your green cards for your abutters?
Yes, I do.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You need them?
Yes.
We need them right here to go in the file, Don. Don, you want to put them in the file?
That's fine.
Okay.
Oh, and we're waiting for natural heritage too.
Sorry. Who gets these?
You can give them to me, and I'll give them to the man who keeps track of them.
Loosely.
That's a pretty thin packet, though.
It is.
We want to get back to the people who give us a packet like that.
Okay. Do I have to say something?
Well, if you don't want to say anything, I'll say something. Would you like me to
Well,
say something?
well, we have a hazardous condition, we've had it for a couple of years now, caused by erosion at Minot Beach West. And the hazard results from some obstructions that don't show themselves at high tide, but they do at low tide. The thing I'm concerned about is that somebody's going to dive in there and hit their head on a rock or one of these spearheads, pilings, and it's going to be hell to pay, so to speak. And so I think we've gotten a few of them out with Jen's permission a while back to sort of a sample or a test. Some of those spears go down quite a ways. And this is the remnants of the old Minot Road. Everything is man-made here. It's not a natural thing. So I've checked with the contractor who does this type of work. He can't get in with a barge, so we're going to have to go overland. He would use equipment that has eco-friendly oil in the equipment. Probably would come through. There's a space between the end of the dune, probably run his vehicle down to the water's edge. Now, you'll see, I don't know whether you got a copy of that letter from the Division of Marine Fisheries, but I just got it, and it talks at length about shellfish and fish and everything else. When it gets all done, it says you got to do it at low tide. Well, yeah, you got to do it at low tide.
Don?
Yes.
You're going to have to continue with this because we don't have a DEP number. And,
Oh,
and what we need...
I sent it to them.
Well, you might have, but we don't have it. But what we need is, we need you to work with whoever the contractor is going to be to give us a narrative. We need to have a narrative, and we need to have, you know, a map as to where he's going to bring his equipment in, what kind of equipment. In the narrative, it should say the work will be done at low tide. There might be, I haven't seen the letter, but there might be time restrictions for certain things. But we need a narrative saying, you know, how are you going to get on the beach, how the work's going to be done, and so forth. And you know, we can ask questions here, but until we have that, you know, we're gonna need to ask that. I might say that this is a project that Don was there that day, wasn't he?
Yes.
I think Jen and I.
Peter.
And Peter.
Ray Jack.
And Ray. Well, Ray was there by telephone because I was handed the telephone
yes.
to talk to Ray. Bruce, some of the guys from the water department. It was a nice party on the beach about 3 years ago.
Mike Souza.
And it definitely needs to be done. I mean, it's definitely a hazard. So we encourage you to get that. You know, have a continuance for 2 or 3 weeks so you can get us that narrative, and then we're more than eager to allow you to do this, but we need to know exactly what it is in writing, what you're going to do.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I don't know how far I can go with a contractor
unless, because we might have to bid the job from the procurement laws.
Well,
I guess we
however,
can,
you don't have to talk to the contractor, but you need to talk to
Well, you
either
need-
Peter or the contractor, or John Lyons, or someone who knows.
no, we can talk to the contractor. I don't know how much detail he wants to go. He may be, you folks may have worked with him before, Chip Schultz, and,
Yeah, we have worked with Chip,
and
but
he
we
may be,
can't.
he may be very, willing to, I certainly will ask him if he could be give us a narrative,
Yeah,
how
Well,
he
no,
proposes to do
wait,
it.
Madam Chairman.
yeah,
If the narrative comes from a particular contractor,
then that contractor
then
has
that
to do it.
contractor is responsible for the narrative that he gives us. So it almost would be better for the town to consult with someone and then come up with a detailed methodology.
Yeah,
because-
but my point is, we need
I
a
know, I
detailed
understand that,
methodology
but-
before we can,
One contractor may have different equipment than another contractor. See what I'm saying? They may
Yeah.
not be able to do it as the methodology states, because their equipment's different. So I would be very careful saying, yes, it's okay for Chip to submit a narrative when the project would have to be bid.
well, I'm not saying Chip would
No, I
submit
understand
it.
that.
I'm saying if you need some help on what kinds of things.
How about
need to be done.
in-house, our engineering department possibly, or something like that?
Yeah, well,
That's fine.
we need a methodology, and they know how to do that. But,
Okay.
the other thing that I think would be helpful is, so I went down sort of mid-tide today, and I've been there at low tide, but if you could, I don't know what the tidal cycle is right now, but if you could, I think there's a new moon coming up soon. And if you could get some pictures at low tide, so it's a better, just some pictures that we have for the record.
I have it in my,
Well, that's not a lowest tide.
And what were the date of those pictures done, do you know?
there was a date on them,
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
2012, sometime in 2012.
yeah. That's, that picture there, some of these pictures are pretty much low tide, let me tell you.
Yeah, but sand, as you well know, the reason these are exposed is that sand shifts. So if you could just get some recent pictures also,
Okay.
at low tide.
And Don, you're only working on the west side of the
Yes.
knot, right, not the
That's
east side?
correct.
And you sent your application in natural heritage?
I think so.
You have it
Yes.
checked out, because there's plovers in that area, so
Yeah,
natural
no, I
heritage.
sent
You
it
sent
in.
it to natural, okay, we have to wait.
Marine fisheries, I
Yep,
sent
we
it
got,
to them,
we
yeah.
have a marine fisheries letter, but we're waiting for now, we can't close a hearing without natural heritage's letter. So
Well,
do
we
you
can't.
know when you sent that to him? You have date on map online to 12/13, but I don't think that's when you sent it.
Now, what about the DEP? They should have sent that in by now, I would think.
I think DEP is looking for a work methodology as well,
Oh,
and they won't issue a number until they receive one.
Courtney?
Yeah, the sorts of things, just following up on Betsy's comments, the sorts of things that you're going to want to include in there are, number one, the approximate lineal feet of pilings to be removed, the approximate time frame that you estimate it will take.
I didn't
An
get your first.
explanation.
What was your first?
How many linear feet of pilings
Yeah.
and linear feet of rocks?
You should
There's a
have an
rock
explanation,
drawing that
a
goes
very
out.
clear explanation of how physically you're going to remove the piles. In other words, are they going to be yanked up? Are they going to be bulldozed over? You see what I mean?
Yep.
So, and that might also include a reasonable estimate as to how far down into the sand or beach or whatever is there that the piles go. Granted, they vary in depth, but approximately. So
Well, we pulled some out just as
yeah, I
a
understand.
sample,
So
and you're looking
that-
at 10 feet,
You embellish
maybe?
your narrative with a discussion
More
of
than
that sort of
Well, you
stuff.
can put in, this is, we've already tested, and some of them go in as far as 10
The
feet.
more complete that you are in that narrative, the fewer questions we will have,
Mhm.
and the more likely it is that this thing will go through the process rather quickly, and you'll be able to get to it. So it's not that we're trying to make work for the town of Falmouth, we're trying to expedite the process, and the clearer and more complete you are in explaining this, the better, and more detail is almost better than not enough. You don't want to leave too much to the imagination of people, or you'll prolong this meeting.
Well, it looks like the Division of Marine Fisheries are probably the most expedient in getting back to us.
Yeah, I would also include in your narrative, the type of machinery that you're anticipating using, and how they're gonna physically access the piles, and at what time, stage of the tide, and, all of that stuff, which seems maybe rather obvious to anybody doing the work. Why do we need to do this? But it needs to be there in the record.
I understand.
Mario?
I agree with Courtney. I think the notice of intent was pretty slim on details, particularly on construction equipment on that beach. I do have some pictures here of the place at low tide, and those are like punji sticks out there. Those are definitely a liability to the town. And so I'm in favor of the project, but I think once again, you got to flesh out that notice of intent with a little more detail as to how you're going to go about this. The real problem here is all those stone groins out there, which we used to call them sand catchers. They're actually sand robbers. What that's going to do is their existence out there is going to produce a continuing erosion problem here. So, but I agree from a liability standpoint, we've got to get those things out of there. I don't know if a site plan was submitted here. I don't believe there was.
No.
And for me, we're requiring private landowners to come up with an engineered site plan. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Don, once upon a time I used to teach school, and I used to give my students an exercise. I pair up two kids, and I would assign one of them the task of writing a description of something that people do all the time. And the other person was assigned the job of following those directions precisely. And you'd start out with something as simple as tying one shoe. So when you're writing your narrative, presume that we don't know anything, and be that complete, and everybody will be happy. That's good advice, in fact, for all of the engineers.
Because we'd like to have this project done before next summer.
Well, I'm going to be at the mercy of other people, but we'll do the best we can.
So when would you like a continuance? I mean, how long do you think you'll need, a month?
Probably, yeah. 3 weeks to a month, I would think.
Okay.
16th,
Let's say the 23rd.
23rd?
Of October.
Is that all right? October 23rd?
On behalf of the applicant, I'd like to propose a continuance to 10/23.
Second?
Tommy?
I just like to offer one suggestion. Is you said you already removed a couple of these?
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, if you already figured out how to do it, then that could be your narrative there and how you plan to do it in the future, or?
Well, the sample we took was much closer to the, it was more reachable.
There's 2 rows of pilings. There's the first row we got, there's the outer row, and then there's all the stuff that was between the pilings that we haven't even located yet, that we're gonna have to go in, dig, and pull up. And that's anybody's guess what's underneath there.
Well,
We
it
know
may
the
be-
pilings are
It may
there.
be that you're gonna have to modify it and at some level below 5 feet, 6 feet, cut off those pilings, and if there's stuff underneath that has 5 feet of sand, we may have to wait until the sand shifts again. But the important
No.
thing is to get all the stuff
It's
that's
shifting.
sticking up ready to spear people, or somebody's fishing line, as one of the letters said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I don't have I'm not against pulling these piles out. However, I am, and I'm glad we're discussing this to have a more complete. I've walked it several times. I wouldn't want to dive into it. No one does. But when I'm tripping over myself, because we've seen many other applications for similar beach nourishment plans and such on private property. And I just highlighted a couple things. Remove all hidden rocks. Well, that's very open-ended,
We need a comment. We
right?
need more of a quantity,
Including,
where they are.
yeah, but also, what determines a hidden rock? If it's hidden at low tide, high tide, this could be very substantial. And then hazardous structures, including man-placed rock. Okay,
Well, all the rocks out there, are man-placed. This is a sediment coast.
Yeah, but
But he wants more detail.
and I'm just, yes, I do.
Even if it's a sketch as to where the rocks
No, I
are,
understand.
and
We're using terms of groin and stuff like that, and I just, if you're removing this in total, I just want the board to be
we
aware
want to
that
know what's happening, and then
that
we have to
this
think about
affects,
what the implications are.
yeah, very much so. I think that this is a litmus test for future projects, because it's a town project. We're scrutinizing it more than you can imagine, just because I think this is gonna set a benchmark. Anything that we do here could be done elsewhere. And that's what I wanna safeguard ourselves,
Yeah.
that we really do this correctly. That's all.
I might tell you, Don, that we actually have permitted this on some private land in that area. So it might be useful for you to look at those NOIs also, and to get some idea of narrative. But, sort of quantity, location, and then methodology for removing.
Okay.
And you thought it was gonna be easy.
Well, I'm not, I haven't done a lot of these, as
Yeah,
you
I
can
understand.
imagine. And there are people around that have, so
Right.
Yeah, that's all right.
I,
Don, I'm always willing to talk to you. If you want to talk about projects, get some ideas ahead of time,
yep,
I'm always willing to do it. And I think this is a project we all want to see move forward. And so,
okay. Understand.
And the other thing, Don, is even though I've made a big point about this methodology, and so has Betsy and others, it really isn't that big a deal. It's just asking to be detailed and clear and step by step. And it just will make everything go forward much better, and everybody will be on the same page as a result. So we're not trying to make your life miserable, we're trying to make it better and make things move more smoothly, so the next time you come in front of us, it'll breeze through.
as it often does, often you're prepared to answer the kinds of questions that might come up. So,
One other question, Madam Chair, if I may.
yep.
On the opposite end of the parking lot, there's a concrete block structure. Somebody might want to just give that an eye. It looks like it's really starting to deteriorate.
Is it undermined, or the?
Yeah, it's undermined on one.
That's one of our storage vaults.
Yeah, that's
Right,
what I
it's
thought it
starting
was.
We have,
It's starting to
we
really,
have them all over the place.
it's starting to show its
Does it need
age.
to be pulled up or
Well,
something?
it's, there again, it's because it's been undermined,
Yes.
and it's made out of cement blocks, so it's.
Can we move it into the parking
Can we
lot
move
more,
it
Don?
a little
You
inland?
can't move that one in.
No, we can't.
It'll fall apart.
Yeah,
We have moved some,
Yeah, the ones out on
Precast.
Wignac, yeah.
Precasts we've moved into the parking lots where we could do it. I've tried to get funding for that for probably 10 years.
you're aware.
But it's a nebulous thing. I mean, we call it a tomb, and you start saying you want money for tomb, you're looking at $4,000 per unit.
Maybe we should, maybe it's time to kind of reframe the way we think of it and not call it a tomb anymore.
Well, we call it a storage vault.
How about a safety, and don't just store safety stuff in it?
Yes?
A safety and
Containment.
access containment. We'll work with you on that one. We'll help you on that one. Okay, we have a motion and second on the table for a continuance to October 23rd.
Correct.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you for the education.
Continued request for hearings under a notice of intent. Jessica Fieldler, 44 Palmet Place, Falmouth, for permission to construct a 5-bedroom, single-family house with attached garage, porch patio to install a Title V sewage disposal system, dry wells, utilities, paved driveway, install native mitigation plantings and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
That's all of them. You're all on this call.
Okay? Do you have any comments?
I'll save any of my comments until Mike goes through his changes.
Mike?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This was a continued hearing. You folks had asked for some additional information and asked us to consider some things, and we also didn't have a DEP file number. So we did listen to you folks and considered your issues and concerns and made revisions to the plan. We also do have a DEP file number now. I added a split rail fence to the site plans right at the limit of work so that it would be clear that that was the limit of where outside activities were supposed to take place, because if you recall, we're proposing a patio that's close to the limit of work. It's not a structure, it's a patio, and we talked about there being a buffer right adjacent. So this revised plans that you have in your files now show a split rail fence, which would be right at the boundary of the limit of work to ensure that the limit of work is honored beyond just what we show on the plan.
No work goes beyond the limit.
Right. We put a note on the plan to change the plant species we had proposed before, bayberry, and we're willing to work with staff on appropriate plant species to fill in the areas that were previously cleared. We have proposed trees now where we hadn't before for the trees that we are removing in and around the proposed house. So we're proposing to add eastern red cedar along this boundary spaced out. They're shown on the plan. There was a question as to whether or not we were proposing a path, and as of right now, there is no path proposed or contemplated to get down to this area. If there ever were in the future, we'd have to come back. I discussed with my client the fact that there's that aggressive invasive porcelain berry as well.
Yeah.
And suggested that they may want to look into future eradication, and we'd be back again for that. So I think we addressed all the issues and concerns, and I'm hoping that we can close the hearing tonight. I'm here to answer any questions.
Well, let's see if there are any questions. Court?
No questions.
Mario?
I think we talked last time, Mike, about, we have a jungle of porcelain berry
Yeah.
there in
Yeah,
the
he just
50-foot
addressed
zone.
it.
I'm sorry?
He just addressed that he told his client, and his client will think about it, and if he's going to do something, he'll come back.
Okay, I didn't catch that, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No questions.
No question.
And you guys comfortable with that patio being right on that limit of work?
Yes.
I
Okay.
am with a
Fence.
fence.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Any further questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, all in favor?
Who seconded that?
Here,
Mike over there.
Mike.
No, I did.
He raised, I know, I said Mike over there.
Oh.
Yeah.
What other mics are there?
Mike?
Move along.
Maybe Mike did it.
Can I call for the vote? All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to close the hearing and take it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike.
Well,
Well, maybe she meant you rather than that Mike seconded it. Maybe that was it.
that was it.
That was it. Okay. Richard and Jill Guidi, 230 Acapasket Road, East Falmouth, for permission to raise, RAZE, the existing dwelling and construct a single-family house with attached garage, decks, terraces, outdoor shower, bluestone entrance, dry wells, utilities, gravel driveway, relocate the septic tank, change the location of an existing retaining wall, remove brick patio and gravel railroad ties and replace with bluestone, connect water and electric to the dock, regrade lawn area and reconstruct existing retaining wall, remove railroad ties and replace with 3-foot-high stone wall, restore salt marsh area and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Quorum?
It's all of you. And Mike made significant changes to the plan to address your concerns last time.
But you don't have any questions right now. Hello again, Mike.
Well, again, Madam Chairman, members of the commission, Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, representing the applicant. I'm joined tonight by Teresa Sprague of Blue Flax Design and Greg Jones, the architect that has designed the house that will replace this house.
And he has a special, something
Here's
special
the
to show
model.
us. Just for me.
Oh, look at that.
But for all of, I'm sure it's not just me who likes that.
Look, it has a little boat.
Yeah, see the boat in it?
I think that boat draws more than 3 feet of water.
Don't go there.
Again, this is a continued hearing. There was some questions, concerns, suggestions, and we also didn't have a DEP file number, which we do now have. I'll just highlight the general revisions that were made, and then I'll turn it over to Teresa to talk about some of the specifics of how we've modified the proposed buffer and the trees that we're proposing for mitigation. I guess the first and foremost, Commissioner DiGregorio had some questions about the delineation of our salt marsh. We went to the site after hearing his comments. I went there with Teresa, and we looked at it closer. And considered Mr. DiGregorio's comments, and the revised plan before you shows a revision to the salt marsh delineation. It's been shifted from what's shown on this rendering. It's been shifted. We moved to, I think, about 10 feet up in this area based on input from Teresa about the type of salt marsh vegetation that was there. We had originally looked only at spring tide elevation and not really focused so much on the plant material and the plant community in that area. As I was educated, is salt marsh species, so we made that adjustment. That doesn't have any effect or ramifications to the project because it's still within a no disturbance zone A, and we're still no closer with the improvements. So the things that you would be considering under FWR 10.18 really don't change, but the plan is now reflecting a more accurate salt marsh delineation. There was significant concerns about our proposal to regrade and construct the wall down in this location. So we completely removed that from the application. There's no proposals to do any alterations to the grading or to do anything with any new walls in this location. So the revised plans that you have reflect that as no longer being a proposed activity. However, up here, we still would like to build what we're calling a stone fence, and it's not acting as a retaining wall, it's basically acting as a landscape feature. And that has been detailed, and there's a cross-section on the plan now that describes what that would be and how it would be constructed. There were questions about the mitigation for the trees that we're removing as part of the house reconstruction. We had not proposed trees initially. We're now proposing trees, and I'm going to turn it over to Teresa to describe the types of trees, the location of the trees, and also talk about other enhancements to the buffer, proposed buffer. And then I'm here to answer questions.
Okay,
You have them all. Greg's here to answer.
okay.
I'll try not to sit on it.
I think somebody almost stepped on it at one point earlier in the meeting.
Good evening, everybody. Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax Design. Just quickly to go over a couple of the things that occurred to me when we were out in the site, and I apologize I wasn't able to be here during the last hearing. So previously, there was a request to do some salt marsh restoration. I think it was an approximately 380 square foot area of salt marsh restoration from a previous dock restructuring or rebuilding. But when I went out to the site, what I discovered was that salt marsh is actually regenerating beautifully on its own, as you would suspect that salt marsh would if some disturbance in the area ceased. However, what I did note was that there was an opportunity to help with the salt marsh, help improve the salt marsh by actually creating an enhanced vegetated buffer. So the areas that I'm showing here are the area to the north of the dock, and then the area just to the south of the dock where there has been some debris, maybe an old wooden fence or something it looks like stored. So rather than proposing to do what Mother Nature is already doing on her own and planting more salt marsh species in the actual salt marsh area, what I was proposing was to actually enhance the buffer to help support the salt marsh. So what we're proposing to do, and I know last time there was a request to actually increase that buffer a little bit more. So we've increased the total buffer area from 685 square feet to 878 square feet, so about a 200 square foot increase. We also increased the number of shrubs that we were proposing to plant in there from 44 to 82, so almost doubling the number of shrubs. Shrub species consist of Baccharis helmifolia, and there is an opportunity to fill in some small areas directly in the salt marsh, but then bring that up along the edges of the salt marsh, as well as northern bayberry, high bush blueberry, some Clethra albifolia, and then some low bush blueberry in there as well, which we did find existing up in this area here. The other question that was brought to my attention was about the number of trees that we were proposing to replace. So we were proposing to replace Nyssa sylvatica and Amelanchier canadensis, and there was a question about the loss of canopy trees. One thing I did want to point out was that the tree that's being removed in the A zone is actually an oak tree that's currently growing through the middle of the deck. So while there is loss of oak tree, it's covered with vine material, wisteria here, and it's actually growing in the middle of the deck. So as far as that tree's ability to provide wildlife habitat, it's somewhat compromised because of where it's located.
Its root ball
Yeah.
is functioning just fine.
No, its root ball is certainly functioning, but it's also surrounded by a retaining wall, a patio, a deck. So there's certainly some limitations to what this tree's doing. However, there's an opportunity to make it better, as there always is. So where we're proposing now to replant we're continuing to replant Amelanchier canadensis because I think there's an opportunity to create a little bit of understory in that area where the debris had been stored previously. And then also along this area where the staircase is going to be narrowed, we have an opportunity to plant additional trees here. Now, the question came up about oaks, I believe, at the last hearing. I am proposing tupelo. And the main reason that I'm proposing tupelo is because there is definitely signs of a cynipid wasp infestation in the oak trees that are existing on this site.
So that's just black oak?
Well, there's two different kinds of cynipid wasps, and they affect scarlet, red, black. There's significant.
Not white. Yet.
Not white yet. That's true. I mean, the other oak that the other problem that I'm having with oak trees right now in mitigation plantings, there's also seems to be a really high incidence of bacterial leaf scorch outbreak that a lot of oak trees I've just had to replace. So in light of that fact, Nyssa sylvatica, similar root system, taproot system with shallow lateral roots, similar wildlife habitat value, similar fruiting time, so fruiting September, October, similar to when oaks are producing acorns. In addition to that, there are a number of existing oaks, and I would recommend that the client has an arborist go out and take a look at the opportunity and whether or not there's an opportunity to save some of those trees. The trees down here in particular are showing significant dieback and twig infestation, so that is a concern. So I'm proposing Nyssa sylvatica simply because I think that we'll have a higher likelihood of survivability, and to provide a similar canopy tree, add a little bit of diversity where we already have a lot of oak species. However, if the board feels strongly that they want oaks back in this area, I would recommend Quercus palustris, pin oak. That seems to have dodged the bacterial leaf scorch issue that we've had this year, as well as being a little more resistant to the gall wasp.
The wasp is
bad.
Gonna be a big problem.
It's a huge problem from
Look at all the
Chatham.
oaks we have.
Yep, Chatham, Orleans, I'm seeing it really severely there, and then in
I had
Falmouth
to have
also.
the oak taken down.
Yeah.
I mean, it just became defoliated over a year.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing happening with some of the trees on this site, which is a concern. And certainly the client wants the trees, she likes the trees, they provide screening, they provide a lot of other things. So I think having an arborist assess the health of the trees and whether or not they can actually be saved at this point, which I have doubts about. So I'm
Okay.
happy to answer any questions about the planting.
Jen, you have a question?
I have a question, Mike. On your plan, that's not the same plan I have.
No, this is just the rendering. I didn't re-render it. There was some revisions. I didn't include the revisions on the rendering.
Okay. That, didn't that go away?
No, that's up near the driveway.
Oh,
There's a retain, I
This
thought the
will go
same,
by the driveway.
that's the same, I had the same confusion. There's a retaining wall
just the
still around the
location of
driveway.
existing, so that cross-section is for that retaining wall,
Yeah.
not the retaining wall that you were digging into the bank?
Right,
Okay.
it was for both.
Both,
Now
but
it's
now
just
it's
for
not.
there.
Okay, and you added another, on your rendering, you added another row of little stonies on the top. Is that just to reflect that?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's
Okay,
double
yeah,
wide at the
got it.
bottom.
Okay, that was a simple question.
You got that one.
When do you think your clients want to start construction? Is there any way we'd be able to do some planting prior to construction, get them established, or?
Yes, I think that's, well, they want to start construction as soon as possible. They're trying to get things moving along in hopes that they might salvage some of next summer. So they're eager to start construction as soon as possible. In fact, your decision is going to basically trigger Greg to start on construction drawings. I mean, he hasn't yet, but they're going to apply for the building permit as soon as physically possible.
And you said that includes putting the water and electric out to the dock?
Yes, I believe that's still covered under the original order, but the construction hasn't been done, and I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
it was reflected on, at least on everywhere, so you'd understand that work still has to take place.
Okay.
Court.
Yeah, I agree with Jen. I think if there's any way that you can get those plantings in before you go into the house, it makes all the sense in the world. And assuming that we close this tonight, you have an order of conditions within a couple of weeks. And if Greg is drawing away and you gotta go through permitting, you can, certainly you've got time to get the plants in. And as long, I mean, it's not too late to order plants, is that correct? And I think that, so don't be
Sure.
surprised if that's a condition in the order.
No, I know, but when you do write that, I'm hoping that you're conscious of the seasonality and the limitations we may have, and not, I mean, we do,
No,
there's no
I get-
reasons not to do what you're suggesting other than weather. and availability of plants. So it'd be a shame if a condition that you may place because of availability and seasonality
Well,
limits.
we can write it so that there's some flexibility in there,
Yes,
but we're gonna make it abundantly clear that that's the priority, and I just think it makes sense
it makes
from a
perfect sense.
construction standpoint, because once you get that house in there, it's gonna be a pain in the what have you to get down there to put your plants in.
Don't disagree.
So everybody should be on the same page.
There's
on
no
this.
reason not to. I agree.
And you still got time to order the plants.
Mhm.
Any other question?
I do, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I like your changes, very good.
Thank you.
My question relates to the fact that the cut in the coastal bank is still shown on the Blue Flags plan. Should the two plans sort of be parallel to one another? So, you got rid of the cut, but the cut's still on the Blue Flags plan.
Okay. If it's, Madam Chairman, if it's reasonable to make that a condition, we can certainly submit a revised landscape plan that makes it abundantly clear.
Yeah, and you know what I think we'll have you do is you don't need this anymore, do you?
No.
Is you can come up and take it off right now. We want another plan,
Yes,
but we'll have a plan in the record. So just circle it and say it's going to be removed and
This right
initial
here.
it. Yeah. Just so we have that in the record.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Date it and initial it, too.
Yeah. If there's not a date, we have someone who keeps track of dates for anything that goes in. We're lucky. Mauro, did you have any other questions?
Maybe there was a misunderstanding. The area that you have north of the salt marsh restoration called Beach, I think we both agreed that that was actually part of the degraded salt marsh.
Yes, and if you look at the revised plan from my office, we've eliminated that.
So there will be no more, there will be no salt marsh restoration, is that?
Right, but
Well, it'll be allowed to migrate
Right.
back to where it's supposed to be.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
that clear that that's not on the table.
Yeah. Teresa, why don't you circle?
Teresa, you're going to have to circle Beach too.
Yeah, sorry. What I'll do is get that updated plan for Mike and put that later in the.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right,
All
good.
set.
That bothered me too, so I'm glad you asked that. Mike?
You guys covered it, no questions?
No questions.
Okay. Ooh, I didn't ask you. You had already asked one, didn't you?
Oh, I
You
ask all
talk.
the time. Yes, I
You
talk
talk.
all the time.
I know you're a little shy, but
Yeah.
do you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay,
I neglected one thing that you also asked us about. If you remember, I had made a point of talking about the existing underground irrigation system, and you had asked me how old it is.
right.
The owner is checking records and trying to track down from the irrigation contractor that installed it when it was installed. He's a new owner, and he was gonna provide that information to me. So what is the importance of knowing the age, and how does that,
We want to make sure it didn't go in last year. That's the importance of
all
the
right.
age.
Is there I wanted to make sure that somehow that was addressed in the order of conditions, in order to keep the underground irrigation, we need to demonstrate the age or something like that?
Yeah, we can write a condition like
Okay,
that,
or,
something like that.
all right, and we're working on that still.
Okay,
Isn't that irrigation system gonna get kind of trashed with the reconstruction of the house?
Yes.
So,
It could get impacted.
so if it's gonna get trashed, then it becomes an academic issue, it's gone away.
well, he's
Beyond
saying that
repair.
this is a pre-existing. I mean, you could keep part of a house and build the rest of the house. So, we can discuss it.
So,
Mike, we can, they'll,
so if you have
we'll
a
discuss,
pre-existing.
we'll discuss a
I'll never
condition.
mind them. I won't go
but
there.
that information would be
I know
useful
where
to
you're
have.
Okay.
He's a
Understood.
curmudgeon on certain things.
I know what he's trying to say.
We just sort of accept it and move on. Okay, does anybody else in the audience have any questions before we close this hearing and take it under advisement? You look like you need to go home, and then you're gonna wish us a happy weekend. Okay, do you not work on Thursdays and Fridays or something? We have a motion and a second on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yeah.
Unanimous, so moved. Did you get that, Susan? All right,
Thank you.
She's been trying to
Thank
keep up
you,
with you
Mike.
guys all night.
thank you. I want to know if you bring that into Eladio too.
We will when we have our meeting, yeah.
Oh, will you?
It does come in handy for clients too, when they
Yeah.
get to see what they're getting.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, thank you for bringing it in, because I do like to see it. And also, Mike, you missed last week that I said how much I like the fact that, I mean, you often do, but everybody last week brought in colored plans. And, you know, it's just a little extra touch, makes it a little brighter during the meeting. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Acapasket Improvement Association, Vineyard Street, map 4508000006, for permission to manage and maintain the existing beach to include raking, screening, cleaning, grading, the installation of temporary snow fence and associated clearing and landscaping.
Great, Courtney, you're not on this one. Tommy, Tom, Betsy, Mario, and Mike. You have a DEP number?
Yes.
And snow fencing, we discussed it today, it'll be metal slats.
It should be in accordance with coastal zone management standards.
It'll be in accordance with metal slats
Yes.
and, you
Yeah.
know, apparently big solid structures are going in along the coastline, not necessarily in Falmouth, but in other places, and it's becoming a concern, so. So we've had that discussion, and there'll be a meeting on site with staff prior to the installation of the snow fencing and prior to the grading. And you
Yes.
said they already have a contractor, correct?
Yes.
Possibly, or,
They have a preferred contractor who they
Okay,
intend
yep.
to use.
okay.
And the
Okay.
snow fence will be clearly what you would expect, nothing more than that. The standard wood lab, wire connected
Yep.
snow fencing,
And we'll
lightweight.
approve any contractor. You'll have to submit, they'll need to submit the name of the contractor, just so we have a certain comfort level
So
that
we
they've
don't have a
done this
problem.
before. Yep.
Understood.
I have an idea who they might use, so.
Could we have a motion?
Before we do?
Yes,
I want to
question.
clear, yes, I do have a question. You said metals?
Like, well, snow
Instead of-
fencing, where's my plan? Yeah, the very, I don't want to see big, solid posts in there or
Okay, it's the
anything like
metal-
that. Just the
typical
metal,
metal-
typical
Okay.
metal
Thank you.
posts
Right.
and not anything like, I don't know, what's that called?
4x4s or?
That's it.
Yep, no,
Yeah,
okay.
that.
That looks round.
What's that?
That looks like,
That-
that looks,
Tom knows what I'm
Say,
saying.
she didn't go like that. She
I
went
knew
like
what-
that.
Tom knew what I was
getting the gist
talking
of it.
about.
All right.
Just
No-
nod
No
my.
question.
Could we have a motion?
Motion to close and take it under advisement.
Second.
Any further questions? Any questions from the audience? All in favor of the motion on the table, which is
Do
you?
you have, this gentleman?
No, this gentleman.
That's right, that's who you are.
That's who I am.
Yeah, I said, who is he? I know he's been at a recent meeting. You're right,
I got to read the plans.
sir. And you have to tell us who you are again.
All right, I will. My name is
I did recognize you, but I couldn't quite
Yes.
place you.
It's Dennis Downey. I'm on a butter. We
Right.
live at 49 Vineyard Street. My wife is out of town this week, or she'd be here, but we very much appreciate the chance to look at the plans and to read what you're okaying here. We don't want to be obstructionist. We recognize that a lot of people use that beach, and it's a joy to watch, to have a lot of people using the beach. But it's still, in reading the plan, the lack of specificity as to what is going to be done and why, to what efficacy. Suppose that, you're trying to manage the beach for what purpose? to improve for some people in July for what they think is going to be a better beach. That beach, the comparison is to the Falmouth Heights Beach, which is a town public beach, which is a very different entity than this beach, which has a lot of natural, different forms. There's the dune, there's salt marsh behind it, there's the pond. Even in the description of the beach, of the environment that you're going into, you describe a dune to the north, a sea groin to the east, the water to the south. There's no mention that it's only one half of one continuous strand of beach. This is not a town public beach, and the only purpose of a town public beach, you could say, in a town like Falmouth, which is so dependent on tourists, is that you have to have a place where you can have hundreds of people go and swim comfortably. This is not that. We have a house there that was built in '28. It was one of the first houses down in that area. We have 3 bathrooms. On the walls of those bathrooms are murals that the original owner had done of, it's clearly that beach, or a beach like that, with the dune, with the seagrass, with the water. What the Acapesket Association does right now is that they are making it increasingly a man-made, like there's a bike rack that's there 365 days of the year. Most of the Acapesket Association goes and lives somewhere else. They've got a boardwalk that goes down there that runs along, I use it, but it still is a man-made structure on a natural, beautiful dune beach. They now have a volleyball court. That's a brand new thing the last 4 or 5 years. It's perfect volleyball. It's like ESPN. That is not the natural beach front there. Somebody's already been grooming that, and that's there 365 days a year. So now when you're talking about coming in and putting metal slats in and a warren of wind fence, of snow fence, to collect snow, to collect sand, to then bulldoze around in some way, for what? Why? Why is that up all the time just to optimize, supposedly, possibly, what it's like in the summertime? And I can tell you from living there, and I've lived in that house now for 23 years, every single year the beach in front is different. And this year was a pain in the neck with the amount of rocks that were there. But I'm confident that next year it's going to be different again. And so what I would question with Mike's plan when I read it is, how do you know that you're going to do anything that's going to achieve anything? We can suffer the visual pollution of having snow fences up there all year, and then the tractors coming on the beach or the bobcats and moving things around, and then one storm in late May can move everything again. So I'm just concerned about this, that management, that it is necessary. For what? You know, the beach has been there, and people have enjoyed it for swimming for a long time. It seems almost a vagary that somebody is coming in now and saying, well, now we better make it like the Falmouth Heights Beach. So that is our concern. There's a lot of people who come there. It's one of the most beautiful spots in Falmouth. And there's people who come and use that beach. With the exception of a stormy day, there's people there every day just walking the beach, or they walk to that beach as a destination just for the natural beauty of that beach. It's not just there for people to swim on in July. So that's our concern. If you are going to allow this, I would ask that you would at least, that the description of what's being done should be expanded to at least admit that that it is part of a single strand of beach. The importance of that is, if we can come back to you, if they do something this fall or this winter, and it deteriorates our beach. In other words, if it is a zero-sum game with the sand moving back, and he's going to collect it all in the winter so that they have it in the summer, it would be good for us if we could have a recourse to you and say something. And that's what I'm not sure from any of this, where the recourse is. In other words, if you give him the permission to do that, they can go and try a number of things over the next couple of years. That's a concern of ours.
Okay, I want to make a couple of comments.
Okay.
One is, I understand exactly where you're coming from,
Yeah.
because those are the kind of beaches that I look for
Yeah,
to walk in the wintertime
yeah,
without any man-made structures. So I understand exactly philosophically your point.
yeah,
The snow fencing that is being described is a technique that's used to help collect wind-blown sand, and is not necessarily, and will probably not affect movement to the left and right
okay.
of sand. You know, that said, I can understand that, you know.
If it does.
If you want to, well, it won't,
Yeah, okay.
the purpose of it is to, as sand is up in the
Yeah.
air,
Yeah,
it baffles the air, and so the sand drops
yeah,
on the other side.
yeah,
It's not going to affect what's moving laterally.
yeah,
I mean, my biggest concern, and I'll tell you, and tell the board this, with any of these snow fencing, is that if there's a storm, that snow fencing's just going to be lifted and ends up
In the dune.
damaging the dune.
yes.
And I have concerns with that. But I don't think there's much more that Mike could put in a description.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea behind it is you have the snow fencing in the wintertime. You said it wasn't going to be put there this winter. It hopefully captures more if there's a storm and there's lots of sand in the air.
Yeah.
It traps more.
Right.
And the idea is, you know how in the spring, after there has been a lot of wind, there's sort of the profile of the beach from the dune out is, it kind of goes like this and out like this. And what they want to do is just make a flatter beach. Now, I could agree with you that, well, that's not a natural beach. A natural beach is the way the sand puts it. But this isn't, this
So
isn't
why
my
are you-
land. I have to look at it from the perspective of what our regulations are.
Yeah,
And is it impacting the environment
yeah,
during those months to have it that way rather than that way?
yeah.
But
But again, and I understand what you're saying. Our concern is that this is being driven by a beach association, most of whom are not there year-round. They don't live near the beach. They live back in Belmar and up in Great Harbors, and they're engineering the beach now, getting a license from you to engineer the beach so that it's perfect for them for July and August, when what I'm telling you is there are people who are using that beach year-round for just the visual pleasure of that beach, the uniqueness of it. And it is unique. It's almost pristine, even though there's a lot of people that use it in the summertime, with the exception of a volleyball court that's there year-round, that's groomed, that's flat. It's flat as a basketball court. Somebody's grooming that already. And a boardwalk that's there year-round, and a sign that's in the middle of the beach year-round. So now you're talking about additionally adding, through the months when all these people are not around, you're talking about adding significant, what I would call visual pollution, to maybe catch some sand. It's not clear whether it's our sand, just, down the beach, or whether it's from Martha's Vineyard where the sand's coming from. That's not clear yet. And to maybe make it so that then there's more sand for them to push around with a bulldozer and make a town beach, a private town beach for them. And there's just not enough oversight for it, I think, to give them a license to go try some of these things. And there is something significantly, potentially being lost in just a natural beauty that has been preserved there for 100 years, at least.
and I can tell you, I'll tell you, I'm completely sympathetic philosophically.
Yeah.
But when we make a decision, we
Sure.
have to base it on, an applicant came in, an applicant has the right to ask for certain things,
Yeah,
and what our regulations permit.
okay.
Madam Chairman, I have some questions for Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let Mike,
I just wanted to make a comment about the snow fence. It's a little ironic that we're talking about the snow fence because we really don't I don't believe the association needs to have a snow fence. We thought that that was a recommendation that I have seen you folks make in the past on other beach management projects. The reality is that it's highly unlikely that they would go through the effort of putting that in every year. They might try it one year and discover it's not worth the effort or the money to do it. What they care about more is grading and grooming the beach and having the right to clean the beach of the upper rack lines and things like that that are typical and common to other beach management projects. We're very happy to not, at this time, consider the snow fence. In fact, I would say to you tonight, if you were to approve this project and want to condition it upon no snow fence, that's fine with us. If we felt after further review that we thought we'd want to revisit that, we'd come back. So
Okay, well, that's good. I think that would alleviate part of your...
a lot of the discussion has been centered around the snow fence, and
Well, I think...
it's almost
yeah, I
become
mean,
a
I can see
distraction
what that
to what.
concern is.
And I
Right.
understand the concern too. And I don't want to be proposing something that our neighbors are concerned about that the association really didn't care about.
Right.
But we were only doing it because we believe that proper coastal beach management included
But there are
that.
times and places where it's
Right.
appropriate. So for instance, one of the places that Jen has suggested people do it, which is appropriate, is along Surf Drive. Because there, you really kind of want to trap that sand before we know what happens to it. It ends up in the road.
Or Minot Road.
Or Minot
Between
Road.
the
I mean, there's
Great
certain
Harbor.
places where it's appropriate to have snow fencing, and certain places where it's less appropriate. Would it work here and collect some wind-blown sand? Yeah. Is it really worth the negative aspects? Probably not.
Or the financial installation costs.
Or the, right.
So that all being said, we're happy to, I say that if
All
you
right, so
wanna-
Jen, you have that down when you,
Well, you guys can vote that.
yeah.
I have a question, Mike.
Mhm.
Property is under what? I mean, who is the owner of the property?
The Acapasket Improvement
So
Association.
if I look on the assessor's record, it says Acapasket Improvement Association.
Yes,
So the Acapasket Improvement Association has a board of directors?
yes, and they have a committee, they have an
Okay.
association.
And the reason I'm asking, because if the board does allow them to give the install the snow fencing, if they'd like, I want to make sure there's a responsible party if there is a storm, and this isn't, because when I had a conversation with you, I think last week, I had never heard of the Acapasket Improvement Association. You were telling me it's all the way up Acapasket, in Belmar, and Great Harbors, and it just seemed like all of those people had deeded rights to this beach, and I wasn't sure if this was an actual group that
Yes.
had rights to do this work on this
Yes.
property.
They're
Okay.
an organized entity, they collect dues. and
Dues,
they-
okay, excellent.
They basically collect the dues, I believe, for, I guess, maintenance of streets, but
Okay,
for-
that's
for
all I
this
need to
beach.
know, is to make sure that, there's a board of directors and
and I
there's a
thi-
committee that
yes,
can be
absolutely.
held responsible if something goes wrong
Yes.
on that beach. Okay.
Yes, and I feel very confident that
Okay.
the president of the association, Mr. Hinderhofer, Joe Hinderhofer, would
Okay,
be
I just
happy
want to
not
make sure
to
there's a
think about the
responsible
snow
party.
fence right now and to revisit that at another time, if they even want to consider it.
Okay, that's fine.
Good.
Thank
Well,
you, Mike.
thank you for coming in.
But where is this going, though? I mean, if you're gonna give it, suppose
If
you...
you're gonna give testimony, you have to do it up there.
I mean, yeah, that's a good
That's-
question.
But are you going to vote on something now that's gonna give him something for the next 3 years, 4 years?
Yes.
And he can do this, he can do the snow fence maybe, or he can do
Well,
it later?
that's
or-
what will be discussed, and I suspect, since Mike said we're happy not to have a snow fence, then a condition, we'll write that into the order that that's
Okay.
taken out
Okay.
of the
Okay.
process.
All right. And I don't want to be too alarmist, because it may also be just fine and all of that, but if there is something that just seems really egregious to us after a year of, because now they have all the sand and we lost all our sand. What recourse do we have to come?
The
Yeah.
addresses.
Take a series of pictures
Yeah,
and come in and tell us about that.
okay, all right. I don't expect that. Last thing, Mike, can you give me the DEP number that you have for that? Do you can give me that. Thank you. Thank you for doing it.
Okay,
Did you want to say something, Tom?
No.
No, okay.
we have a motion and a second on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. If there are no further comments, we'll call for the vote. I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. John and Judith Dowling, 106 Ransom Road, Falmouth. Request to amend the existing order conditions, DEP number 253761, to construct and maintain timber steps, reconfigure the driveway, change driveway surface to chip seal, fence installation, modification of non-mitigation plantings, replacement of a retaining wall with a smaller curbing, deck modification, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
I'll hold any of my comments until after the presentation. Thank you.
Tim?
Good evening for the record, sorry. Good evening for the
You
record.
live out of town, don't you?
Yes.
It's late for you.
I know you guys like to put me at the end.
You always have the
You always
amended,
have the
it's
amendment.
not us.
Good evening for the record, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. Also with me this evening is Dan Celine, the landscape architect. The project has been before you a few times now, so most of you are familiar with it. What I've done here and what I've handed out to you is basically a highlighted plan. The pink is the existing approved, what I'm going to call structures.
Was this done? Is this house done?
It's under construction right now.
Yeah.
That are being altered. So what we have is a walkway that's being altered, a retaining wall, and modifications to the driveway that are being removed or altered. That equals 315 square feet. So if you turn to the second page or look at the lower drawing, what I have highlighted in yellow is the modified walkway, some steps off of the existing house, and a modification to the deck. That equals 315 square feet. So it's kind of a one-for-one alteration of what was previously approved to what we're modifying it to. All of the work being proposed is within the previously developed area of the original home. There's no increase in structure within the A zone, so there's no increase in mitigation plantings. I believe when we originally came in, we were proposing 416 square feet of mitigation plantings. At the time, we had 148, I think, square feet of increase within the A. Over the last few amendments, that's been reduced to 38 square feet. We're still proposing the 416 square feet of mitigation plantings.
And you're doing some restoration work.
There's
too,
also,
right?
yes, there's also some restoration plantings.
And have you been doing that?
It hasn't been done yet.
Hasn't started?
If you've been to the site, it's a very tight site, so if they put any plants in, they would have got trashed.
Oh,
And that's, I'm gonna call that in layman's terms. Okay?
I understand. I understand.
So, I think for this site, it'd be best to wait till all the construction's done.
Yeah, this is a beautiful site.
Yes. This is,
Okay, Jen, any questions?
No, not right now.
Court?
What's the existing driveway that was approved?
The existing driveway that was approved was crushed stone. There was a drainage bioretention basin proposed. It's still being proposed. The top of the driveway from the street, basically down to the parking court, is pavement. It exists, that will remain pavement. The lower portion was previously approved as crushed stone. The applicant has since requested to come back with chip seal. Either way, it's in the A zone, so it counts towards structure, your count. Whether it's pervious or impervious in the A zone, it's the same, and we are proposing drainage for it.
So it was In your original application,
Correct,
you calculated that as impervious surface?
correct.
Thank you.
Mario?
No questions.
Tom?
This is, I'm gonna end up walking down there again, because this is one of my favorite spots in the
Because
whole
you
town.
like this site.
I might visit this site again too,
This was
because I'd
awesome.
like to
I think so.
go there.
Yeah, me too.
And I might visit Pine Bank this winter, because that's gonna be an active area. Mike, any questions, Tommy?
No.
Move to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Did you change the species of the inkberry?
We're using different inkberry in different places.
No, mitigation plantings.
I don't believe so. I mean,
You have this one listed as densa, and is that the native form?
that's the form that's been approved in the past, approved to use in the past, it's not compact. It is, I mean, the standard form is hard to come by. Densa is generally what we use. And again, it's been approved in the past, so.
Okay. I'm not quite sure. I know we always put do not use, the, dwarf varieties, so if that's a dwarf variety. No, okay, I was just curious, thanks. Mike, this is the file.
Just add a
Sure,
line of information.
sure.
Yeah, Dan Celine, landscape architect. I just wanted to say that, just to further inform you about the process, because of the size of this site and the tightness of the work area, the landscaping really won't start until the house is virtually finished. And all the general contractor has vacated the site, and it's entirely accessible for landscape work. I think that's the most effective way and the safest way to approach it in this project. And the landscape then will be installed in the spring.
And maybe we visit it after you've landscaped it?
You're welcome anytime.
All right.
I think,
Coffee's on.
Okay,
that was,
hey, sounds good.
I think that was cleared the last time, is the it was gonna be
Yeah,
done
yeah,
after
yeah.
construction.
So, motion and a second on the table to close the hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor?
Susan doesn't know who made the motion or
I
who
made the
seconded.
motion.
My second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous, so moved.
Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Tim.
I'm gonna have a great week.
No.
Have a great week.
I'll see you in a few weeks. Okay. Enforcement issues. Eel Pond Realty LLC, 87 Water Street, would toll for digging, clearing, and altering wetland resource areas, and a buffer to resource areas is defined in FWR 10.00 and 310 CMR 10.00. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the property owner has asked that we continue this because they are out of town until October 29th, and I
So-
recommend that.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor of a continuance till October 29th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, unanimous, so moved. Okay, we have this is under other business. Request from Boy Scout Troop 40 for permission to use Deer Pond Reserve for overnight campout on September 27 and 28, 2013.
I move to allow it.
Second.
Any questions?
Haven't we usually put a condition on there that they clean up their mess? and
Yes, it
all
says,
that?
as Assistant Scoutmaster, Falmouth Boy Scouts Troop 40, I sincerely request permission of the Conservation Commission for Troop 40 to conduct an overnight campout September 27 and 28 at the Deer Pond Reserve. This is an annual event for the troop, and the commission has granted permission in the past. The camping will be restricted to the existing tent site with small open cook fires to the existing campfire pit, and no vegetation will be cut and no activities will occur near the pond.
And I guess Courtney just wants to modify
Yep.
our approval.
No litter, yep.
Our approval that we expect, as good Boy Scouts, they will leave the site in better condition than they find
Yes,
it.
leave clean and litter free.
All trash would be removed as they go out,
Yes.
taken from the site.
Okay, so we have a motion, the second on the table. to approve camping this next weekend. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Fees.
Awesome.
Jen has a couple of recommendations. I don't know if people have gotten to look at them. And just to give all of you a little history, 5 years ago, Courtney remembers the history, he was the only one on, 5 years ago.
No, Tom says he was.
5 years ago, you were on that?
Oh, that time.
Oh, yeah, you were on that. Well, 5 years ago, we recommended, we did an analysis, and what we did was, we said, what's the average amount of staff time that it takes to prepare one of these? And obviously, it
varies.
widely varies, but at kind of a rough amount. Then we also looked, compared with other towns, and we said, when had it last been done? And it had last been increased 10 years prior. And so we came up with the board as a recommendation, and looking at it, we were way below all the other towns. And so we recommended we double the fees. Well, the Board of Selectmen, some of the Board of Selectmen were a little taken back by that and weren't happy at all, actually. And then I pointed out to them that it was a recommendation. They asked us for a recommendation, that was our recommendation. But other selectmen actually read our report and said, well, we understand why you're doing this. We would just recommend that we do it half 1 year and the other half the next year. So that was 5 years ago. Now Jen's redone an analysis and has found a couple of areas where we might make these recommendations. And
Yes,
so
and I
she's
just
going to
want to
present
point out,
them.
Madam Chairman, that when you did raise your fees the last time, your notice of intent fee went from $50 to $100. So doubling it sounds like a lot, but in the big scheme of the projects that you see,
Right.
a $50 increase in the fee was
Right,
fairly
and
minimal.
$100 really doesn't cover
Not at all.
the amount of time that it takes
Not
to
at all.
process something.
Anyway, I looked at your fees, and there are 2 areas within your fee schedule that I thought you should have some discussion about. The first one was coastal projects, and the second one was commercial projects. I looked at the commercial today, so in front of you, you have it highlighted, the yellow is your coastal. If you jump up one category to category 2, go across to Barnstable, so you have, you charge $150 for commercial projects. Plymouth charges $500, Sandwich $560, Barnstable $525. You bounce down to Mashpee, it's anywhere between $450 and $900. But $900's after the fact, so it's like $450. Category 3 for road construction and things like that, and Brewster's $750. So you are fairly low. So I thought that was an area that could be identified that you could have a discussion about. Also coastal projects, right now, you are at $450 for a coastal project. Plymouth is over $1,000. Barnstable is, has a couple of different fee structures for their coastal projects. I was intrigued. They charge $750 for a saltwater pier, and then they add another $250 per linear foot. So I thought maybe you could look at that $250 per linear foot idea and have a discussion on that. Again, Brewster for their coastal projects is $500 to $700, and Mashpee and Wellfleet follow the linear foot idea. So those are the areas that the staff identified that you may want to have discussions about revising your fees. You should have a discussion tonight and either recommend something tonight or next week. This does need to be to the Board of Selectmen on October 4th. We received the email on Friday, which is why it's before you tonight, and we sent you the spreadsheet as fast as we could put it together. So, as I said, those are the areas that the staff identified that you may want to have a discussion about. You can also have a discussion about all your fees. It is really up to the board. But we gave you all the information. Mike, I talked to you last year in bylaw fees. We generated $37,000 roughly, and the town portion of the state fee, we generated around 21,000, you know, 22,000, it was 21,661. Just to let the board know that the town portion of the state fee for the past 8 years since I've been here. $50,000 has been appropriated for that, from that account to the operating budget to help fund the Conservation Department. So that's where that money goes. That money can only be used to administer the Wetlands Protection Act. And it is a fund that has to be appropriated by town meeting. So that is how that fund is expended.
So if I understand it correctly, then...
The 37,000 goes into the general fund.
Right, so we have a fee account that the town appropriates $50,000 from each year?
To the operating budget.
Right, and yet we only take in 20,000, am I hearing that correctly?
In that category, yes.
Okay.
But that is the town portion of the state
No,
fee. Your bylaw fees are separate.
But in any event, the fees that we charge and the money that we take in only underwrites a small portion of the cost to administer the bylaw.
$2,000.
Your salary and all of that, Mark.
Yes.
Your various activities. Okay, thank you.
What was that, Tommy?
Isn't it $2,000 difference? Isn't the town picking up $2,000 worth of slack from other funds?
I don't follow what you're saying.
The town portion of state fees.
Is 50,000.
No.
That's what it comes out. No, if 50,000 were raised, which it isn't raised.
No, you raised.
But if 50,000 were raised, that would have to be used
For
to
the,
fund the
state.
Conservation Department.
Right.
The Conservation Department costs more than 50,000.
Right.
It's just something
So that
that
you're
the
saying-
town appropriates each year for the operating budget, much like
Is
they
it only
transfer
50,000?
from your wetlands fund. That is the town portion of the state fee. Then all your bylaw fees go into the general fund, which helps support the town, the operating budget and everything
Now,
else.
Courtney's point is that
Our budget is
all
more
of these
than that.
fees total do not,
Don't come close to it.
don't come close.
Right.
So, but, so you could say the real work is X amount more.
Yeah.
But in, given, you have to give it in the context of what people are paying in other places.
Yeah, and I think that the notice of intent, the fee structure that you have now for notices of intents and requests for determinations of applicability and amended orders, it pretty much falls in line with the rest of the towns listed on this spreadsheet. And like I said, I chose the bigger Cape towns and Plymouth and Wareham directly off Cape from us. So you are more than, you can have a discussion about raising those. I just didn't identify those as an area that I felt needed your attention.
Yeah, I want to make comments, because I'm not going to be here next week, and I don't know whether we're going to vote this week or next week, but I want to make my comments on the two areas that you suggested.
Okay.
Courtney, did you have a question first off?
No, I want to make a comment, but I'll wait and let you.
Okay, so in thinking about the commercial fees, we're lower than a lot of the places. And I
Quite a
think-
bit lower, yes.
Right, and I think one of the things we should think about is many of our commercial, we don't see commercial projects all that often, but almost all the time we do see commercial projects, they involve stormwater.
Or a large, a lot of technical
A lot of
knowledge,
technical.
as you saw tonight with that retaining wall for Royal McGann.
Right, which is, that was one I think we could handle in-house, but a lot of the commercial things, Jen works with DPW to have them review, and so I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask for an increase in fees, because it's, it's not only our staff time, and you're spending the same amount or more time than you would on other projects, but that's an area where you often have to consult with other town boards. So that's one, so I definitely think that should go up, and how much is up to the discussion. And the other thing, for coastal projects, I also think since we're sort of half of what some of the other projects are, it's something we could think about and think about whether it should incorporate this idea of
An additional.
not only a flat fee of $450, but one of the ways we could do it is an additional X amount of dollars per linear foot of seawall or per linear foot of dock and so forth. So those are the two sort of framework comments that I want to make. Court.
This discussion about fees, of course, relates to the cost of the services that government provides versus the revenue that is generated in taxes and in fees. And this is part of this in microcosm is the same debate that's going on in Washington right now.
Mm-hmm. Although it's not going on because only one side speaks.
Yeah. And oftentimes, and our selectmen, God bless them, are, of course, political animals, and therefore, are going to hear cries of anguish from anybody who suggests that they're going to raise fees. But when I look at these fees that we charge, across the board, we tend to be less expensive than other towns. And I think that we also have to look at the fact that in terms of the impact on the project costs, the fees that we charge are relatively small. And by comparison, for example, if you build a new house in this town, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I believe that the permit fee is $8 per thousand of valuation. So if you build a $1 million structure, that permit fee is going to be in the thousands of dollars, not 100. Okay? And so I honestly think that we should not be afraid. Yeah. If you have $1 million house, I don't want to do
8%.
no, $8 per thousand.
Oh, 8 per
of
thousand.
valuation.
Okay,
So
it's
if you
8
have, how
times
many thousands in a million?
8,000 would be
Okay.
$8,000.
Yeah, and yet the same house being built on the water, we only charge a $100 fee. So the impact is relatively small. And I think that goes down across the board if you look at the scale of these projects. So my feeling is that this board ought to recommend that this fees go up significantly. Either they get tied to the value of the project, or they get, just like the building department, or at the very least, they get up. A single-family house, why not go to $200? Why not go to $500 for commercial? Why not go to $1,000 for coastal projects, $1,000 for road costs? And then if people do these things after the fact and they want, we're charging double, why shouldn't we charge triple? There's a lesson to be learned. Now, I also agree that you can raise fees for projects, and that discourages people from going out and asking for permission. So I would not recommend, for example, on some of these things, such as a determination of applicability or whatever, that we raise those fees significantly. Although on the revised plan fee, which is currently $50, I think it should go to $75. For an additional site visit, I think it should go to $100.
We rarely ever charge for additional
You really
site-
charge for what?
Additional site visits, Courtney.
Well-
We're constantly going out to a site.
Well,
We do absolutely collect for a revised plan.
you have a consultation fee, you don't have it, you don't charge for that. Well, and I think for someone to come in and sit down with you for an hour, I don't think you should charge. That's part of the service the government provides.
Yeah, and we don't do that
But I would say,
either.
once you get past the first hour, I think we should reserve the right to
That-
charge
that
$50
says
an
not
hour.
applicable.
In fact, I'm only throwing out numbers, but I honestly think that across the board, to help not only defray what this actually costs, but also to make it more realistic and in line with what some of our other departments charge, that this should go up. And I think, you know, we're providing services, governments provide services, and you have to pay for those. That's how you balance your budget. And
Well,
too often.
if I may, Madam Chair, I appreciate your passion on that and your experience with it, but there's no way I would ever tie this into the cost of the structure, similar to as the building department does. We do not, no, I would not be in favor of that.
Because we don't look at the structure, we don't look at
Yeah,
the
there's just
plumbing,
a-
the electrical, or anything like that.
It's apples and oranges in my eyes.
No,
I would
and-
say,
and-
I was patient enough to hear your portion of it, Court, and I have a trouble on any time raising the fee. However, reviewing this and seeing that if I was doing something in Plymouth or Barnstable, or even Sandwich, you know,
Especially
there is room in here for an adjustment, no denying that. Now, this goes into the general fund,
Yes.
and then the appropriation is still gonna be what the selectmen determine for the Concom.
Well,
Well,
Town
when we
meeting.
do our
Town
budget.
meeting, yeah, well,
Yeah, when we get our
it's not-
budget approved by town meeting, yeah.
Right.
But
So that's-
recognize that any increase that we suggest is just our recommendation.
Yes.
And it has to be voted by the selectmen. So if you want political reality, we're not gonna do NOIs up to $500. That
Yeah,
won't
that's-
even be entertained.
Like I
Well,
said, I
and
identified these
and
areas.
And Betsy, in all due respect, and Tom, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm only making a broad point. And, you know, and I would agree, necessarily tying fees to value of project and so on is perhaps not realistic, and that's fine, I don't care. I think the biggest point is that our recommendation should be to increase the fees by some amount, particularly the upper end fees, the fees for things that, you know, routine, and for not NOIs, what am I trying to do? RDAs for administrative approvals and those things, where you're trying to encourage people to come in and talk to us and get permission. I would agree that those fees ought to be kept low, even if they're kept artificially low. But I think that the other ends of the coin, the first 5 or 6 fees, and perhaps some of the other ones down below, I think those should definitely go up. And it's just part of, you know, the cost of doing business, if you will.
Well, we have to come up with, and I think Tom would like, since I'm not gonna be here next week, Tom would like us to make some decisions this week. So we need actual figures.
I can put a motion on the table if you'd like, for the
I think that would probably be good for general discussion.
Yeah, on category 3, as you have it highlighted, where the fee is now at $450, and reflecting all the way across at other towns, and being in that, I could see that going up to $550.
Do you want to entertain the $250 per linear foot addition to it? Some towns have that, some don't. Plymouth doesn't, but Plymouth charges quite a bit for their
Now, that would
coastal
also include
project.
any bulkheads and that type of thing?
That's up to the board. Some of them do include the bulkheads, like Wellfleet, Mashpee, and Brewster. It just docks, well, no, sorry, not Brewster. I would interpret those to mean they included bulkheads, but we did try to do a little bit more
Well, my
sleuthing about that.
For the sake of discussion, I'm just gonna go up with a flat rate of $550.
Okay.
And then on the other one that we have highlighted.
Commercial.
We're at
We're at 150.
150. I would say that could be, judging again, just from our neighboring towns, we could go up to 225 on that.
How about 300? I
I-
raise you 75.
That's fine,
All right.
300.
How much?
300.
Okay.
300 flat fee, yep.
Flat fees are a little bit easier to calculate, aren't they?
Yeah, and
Yeah, I would, just for the sake of that. And as far as I'd have a hard time even putting a motion for the single house, just because you go across, it's not, you get sandwiches, just like, wow. But,
It's because their taxes are
Yeah,
low.
I didn't identify the notice of intent as an area. I thought you should, I didn't call that out as an area for discussion because you did seem to be right in line with the other towns.
now the dredging,
Dredging is.
Dredging?
It's 450.
It's
Yeah, I could see
450.
that
We could do coastal projects and dredging. So we could move dredging up to category
Yeah.
3 and make it 550.
that would make me,
Okay,
that would make me happy. I
okay,
think that's because of the time involved on that.
okay.
And that would be my motion.
And again, those are projects where projects where we call other town departments in to assist.
So you don't want to do the 250 per linear foot even on a
No,
pier?
at this point in
No?
time, no.
Okay,
It's just cleaner to,
okay, that's fine with me. Makes it
Mario.
easier for us.
Okay, I'm gonna be the skunk at the garden party here,
Okay.
okay, which I'd like to do, actually. Is anyone else irritated by the fact that, bang, the Board of Selectmen want us to act on such short notice? On
It's
something-
always like that. They give about a 2-week window. They sent an email on Friday.
Well, I just got this, what, today or yesterday? I mean,
They sent
this
us the email Friday,
She just
Mario,
got
and we
it.
put it
This is a
together.
when they do
politically,
it.
this is a
When they do it
politically
each
loaded
year.
issue, and I'm not prepared to make any action on it tonight.
okay, Mario, I can, wait a second. I can tell you that when we recommended 5 years ago to raise the fees, the year before, the same thing came. We were asked, Jen said, they want to know next week. I said, well, we can't possibly do it. We need to do an analysis ahead of time. So we did an analysis, so when they asked, we were ready. This time, as soon as, and this is the analysis that we did.
Yeah, we just
In addition
updated this.
in addition to how long it had been done before, well, we know it was 5 years ago. And the other thing was how much staff time is required for these. And it was the same. I mean, it was, it doesn't cover staff time for any of these. So that answer's the same. And so, we don't have to make a decision tonight.
I'm sorry
the only
you're not
reason
gonna
why
be
I
there
would
next
like to
week.
be is that I'm not gonna be here. And,
Well, I mean, you could let me know what your recommendations are. The only thing
Yeah,
is,
well, I
Mario,
agree.
we were
I
asked to
agree with the
have it
recommendations you just made.
to the selectmen to the selectmen's office by October 4th. So we got it to you as quick as possible, thinking you could kind of have a discussion tonight, digest it, and then maybe make a recommendation
Well, you
next
have to.
week. I
I
do
mean,
know.
otherwise you wait another year.
Yeah, I do know that I spoke with the town manager's office today. There are some other boards that would like more time, so I don't think the Board of Selectmen is going to take this up until October 21st, she said. So, I mean, if the board does want more time and you do want to have until the 9th to think about it, I think that would be fine, and I can clear that
Jen?
with the town manager's office.
Jen?
You don't have to vote tonight.
If we were asked to have it on the 4th,
That's what the
I
email
think we
said.
should have it on the 4th.
We should be diligent enough that,
And
I
the
know this
choices
is-
are, we don't make a recommendation, which is by default we've done for 5 years, 4 years now. Or, I haven't talked to these two gentlemen to my right, but I think the general feeling is that there should be some increases. So it's the amount of increases and in which categories is what we have to pin down.
I'll be honest with you, I had a brief discussion with a professional, and they had made the comment, this is someone who works with this, and it was stated to me that, geez, your fees are very low. And that was unsolicited by me. It was
Well,
only-
that happened to me 5 years ago
And
by professionals we work with.
And so even though I hate any increase on things, that is for your consideration, my fellow board members, the 300 and the 550, that would be my recommendation.
And 550.
Correct.
2, 3, 4, 3, 550, 550.
And that would be my recommendation to put in front of the selectmen for their review.
And then add dredging to your coastal
300
projects.
for this.
Correct.
550
the dredging, instead of this goes up here. This gets,
And road crossings is gonna be
Right.
road crossing / construction, because that's what it means, so.
correct.
Okay.
Mike, any comments?
I'm new to
Just
this.
want to think about it.
I want to think about it, but I'm new to this, but it all seems,
You should be able to wrap this
the,
up next week. I mean, we need to have a
it seems like the cart is before the horse to my mind. The town, if you, the town sets what it wants to accomplish, and when you set fees, you encourage or discourage some behavior. That's part of the, besides driving revenue, and if the town wants to promote growth along the waterfront, or whatever you want to look at, then I think the town should be coming to us to saying, what are the costs and what are the ramifications, not us telling them what it is. I mean, this is
what the process is here.
This is backwards
This is what
to
the
me.
process is. They ask us for recommendations.
I'm
We give
understanding the
a
comment, but
recommendation,
you've got to.
We base it on our analysis, and then they make the decision. So if they want to encourage certain kinds of behavior and don't want to raise fees, they can do that. This is just our recommendation based on knowing that the amount of effort that goes into this is far more than is covered by these fees, but these are reasonable fees. This is what people are paying when they do projects in these other areas. We're not going to change how the process works.
I think I'm with Mario in that I don't think I am qualified or knowledgeable enough to really make a recommendation. I just don't think I do.
You can
So-
choose not to vote.
Okay, but with that said, the notion that everything goes up over time, it's been 5 years, all costs have gone up, the total fees don't cover the cost of what's doing business. The person who is benefiting should pay something. So I philosophically, I'm in
That
board.
would be the presentation I would give to the selectmen.
That
would be
is-
the rationale I would give for any
So
increase.
with the understanding that it's been voiced before, we don't want to do anything that, we want to reward, being in a positive sense, we want to reward good behavior. So administrative review and the individual points, I think they should be as low as they can so people feel they're not encumbered.
Right.
So I'm with that. So if we're talking about the three,
But larger projects, people should bear
could
some of the
Jen,
cost.
Jen, I agree. If you could take a look at the last couple of years and see what dollars we generate by increasing these fees, just take a gross number, if we're accomplishing anything?
Okay, so you want what we collected over the past 5 years?
Yeah, but in the three
In
categories.
the categories,
In the three categories that we're covering, just so, because I got a funny feeling we're doing nothing.
2, 3, and 4. Well, there are a lot of coastal projects.
Yes,
I understand that, but we take that is gonna be difficult just because the way we do the deposits and the way the checks come in. I mean, I would have to go back for the last 3 years and look at all the projects individually. It's not like something I did today.
Okay.
Where I could run into the accounting office and ask them to give me all the notice of intent fees. We do fees.
how many projects do we see a year?
I can tell you how many notice of intent you see a year, and I
Okay.
could probably give you a rough estimate over the last 3 years of how many
I can tell you how many,
docks,
because I prepared
revetments.
I
Yeah,
prepared
I can actually just go
a
through.
report for the Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen.
All right.
For April.
So, with
So
my
next
10
week,
my
you
10
want,
The agenda
Betsy,
yet.
1 second. So next week, you want how many houses, coastal projects, and commercial projects in the past year?
Yeah.
About 100 notices a year.
And I could,
We do.
without even looking at it,
Include any
Mike,
of
I could
these.
tell you, it's not gonna make a difference. It's not gonna make a dent. The budget in this, there's
that's
no
right.
way in the permitting on this. And I am pretty naive to a lot of the financial end of things, and I don't understand. I am a novice. I don't proclaim to know all of this. But I'm telling you, no matter what we do for fees on this, we are gonna be light years from making a big dent in it. it's not gonna
Well,
happen.
But it's
then,
just
well,
asking-
now you're striking down to my point, because if we're going to take,
It should be,
if
make it
if we're not
meaningful.
gonna make if we're not gonna make a difference,
Then
and we
why
may
do it?
hurt somebody, it doesn't make any sense to do it.
I think it's asking big projects, big commercial projects should be paying
Yes.
the cost of the
But
burden.
if this department is subsidized by the town, which is paid for by taxpayers anyways, if we're getting it from this angle or we're getting it from the general fund, what is the difference?
But the general fund, this goes
This
into
is
the
the
general
general
fund. This
fund.
helps support
This
the
goes to
general
Right,
fund.
but the
general fund.
department's gonna be paid for by the taxpayers anyways.
Because people who are doing these projects, why should I, as a taxpayer, pay for somebody to build a dock? Why should I have to pay additional?
On a,
Well,
Taxes.
usually people who are building docks are paying a lot more in taxes anyways.
Well, they are paying in taxes, but we're talking about a permit to build a dock, which you have to do, Greg has to weigh in, Chuck
guys-
has to weigh in, lots of people have to weigh in
You
on
could
these
recommend
permits.
no increases if you want.
I'm
It's
just-
really up to you guys.
So, Madam Chair, so following on some of the points that have been made here, one of which is that with the fees as they are now, which don't go to actually meet the cost of doing business, our business, it means that the taxpayer is subsidizing what we do, which is fair enough. But were we to raise the fees, then the taxpayer, individual taxpayer who may not have any stake in this at all, would theoretically pay less.
Not a whole lot less, but less.
No, but
Are you gonna notice that on your tax? on
you
your
may
tax
not
bill?
notice it, but my point is,
But it's all over town.
that it's
There are
only,
fees that are
it's
being
only
discussed.
fair, it's only fair that those
Guys?
who are doing these things bear the burden of it.
We all
or
know
bear
that-
more of the burden of it. Why subsidize them? I mean, I think that Tom's recommendations, quite honestly, are probably more realistic than anything I could propose. But for the sake of the argument, I'm gonna put it on the table. And it should be that a single house is 200, that a commercial project is 500, that a coastal project is 1,000, that dredging and all of those things are 1,000, that lineal foot costs double to 5, and the only other one I would change is the dock inspection fee.
Well, we don't.
Have that go to 500.
And we don't really even, as I said.
Well, that's not my fault we don't charge
No,
it.
no, I understand that.
So
And
I'm gonna put
that
that
kind
on
of
the
falls
table.
into
And I'm gonna
compliance.
make the point, since, Tom, you're gonna have to deal with this next week, because people wanna look at it. I am going to make a final point, and then we'll end this discussion tonight. And that is, any recommendation we make to the selectmen, no, we're not covering everything. We're asking people to pay, doing certain projects to pay part of the cost, not the whole cost, that this department has to bear.
Right.
And this is true of any discussion of fees. But the other reality is, that this gets to your point, that's, to your guys' point, I understand this isn't gonna make a difference in the big amount of money that's coming into the general fund. But to your point, we're just making a recommendation to the selectmen. And if you make a recommendation that is way out of line with what we already have, they're not gonna do it. They'll say, no, we're not gonna change fees.
So,
if we
in other
think-
words, a coastal project that we charge $450 for, Plymouth charges $1,400, so I'm going right in the middle at 1,000.
No,
I
Plymouth
know,
charges,
I'm just saying that at
Plymouth
some
charges-
point in time, 5 years down the line, it might be appropriate to raise the fees again. But part of this is politics, but part is our recommendation based on our working with people in the system, knowing what people have to pay in other towns, and what's a reasonable amount. And we'll end the discussion with that, and
Boy, I'll tell you
and I
what.
can't wait to hear,
I
to
think,
see
staff is
what the
agreement
recommendation
with
is.
Tom's recommendations.
And
because
realize
they're
next-
very modest.
Yeah, realize next week, I'm sorry, Jen.
No, I'm just saying that they're very modest, and Tom, you've only proposed to raise your coastal and dredging projects by $100 per project.
Right.
And your commercial projects, which again, do take not only the conservation staff's time, but often engineering staff's time, by $150. So I think those are modest recommendations. Again, the rest of the categories I didn't feel warranted a review. They're in line with the other towns. You can go back and forth about the cost versus the other towns, the departments' budgets across the board. All different.
This is our recommendation.
Yes.
And I
And the
would,
Board of Selectmen makes the decision.
And you can, digest it for a week. If any of you have any questions over the next week, you can ask me. Mike, I'll try to get those numbers for you about the numbers of notices of houses, commercial projects, and piers for the last 3 years. I can actually just do that looking at the project names and addresses. I can pretty much compile that for you. Mario, if you have any questions, let me know. We just kind of looked at all the other
only point I wanted
towns.
to make was this is a rather big issue with us, and frankly, I wonder if the Board of Selectmen, I'll probably get fired for this, have the political will to accept any of our recommendations.
I'm not quite sure.
We've already gone through, Mario. We had an increase from $50 5 years ago, to $75 and then to $100.
So I just
So
wanted
over-
to.
What has happened in the last 5 years?
Nothing.
We haven't. That's why we're revisiting. There's no sense in revisiting this, as you
Every
can see,
year.
listening to this discussion.
I couldn't
every
sit
year.
through discussion every year.
if I may, Madam Chair.
Jen did not want to have to sit through this discussion again, given all the effort that we had to do to get our recommendations across.
Yes,
last
and
week.
if any of you have any questions, let me know. I didn't anticipate you voting a recommendation tonight. I wanted to give you the
But
time. I
I'm saying
understand
I
you
want to
won't
recommend-
be here.
I want a vote next week.
Then
Yes.
That's what I'm going to, next week when I'm in the chair, I am not gonna entertain a whole lot of, it's not gonna go more than 3 minutes. It's either gonna be, and I'm serious, all right?
No, I understand,
Because
Tom.
this is just something,
And
get
you're
your
gonna-
information
You're gonna
in,
make a recommendation, and you're gonna say,
And
I
that's
would
it.
like someone to put this on the table.
and if this isn't acceptable, then we can do it, just do no recommendation. This is,
And that's
I'm a
fine.
volunteer on this board. I'm not really happy on.
You've had enough.
Yeah, I
All
am.
right.
No,
I've
that's
had enough.
fine.
So I want to know, vote orders and conditions, are there any projects that I need to?
Yes.
Either of these do I need to do?
Well, yes.
You ready to do
Sorry,
these?
Tom. We can just do 145 Falmouth Heights Road, that's McDougal's, that's the only one I need you for next week.
Okay.
I will need, all, Tommy, Mike, Mario, and Court, you'll be here next week?
Yep.
Okay. McDougal's is Tommy, Mario, Mike, and Betsy. And next,
What's the
so
other
this
one?
is the, they're
Pretty
fixing,
straightforward.
Yep.
it's very straightforward, they're putting the tiebacks, they're digging that out.
Yep, did a nice
Because
job.
it's settling.
Yep, did a nice explanation.
Motion to
Okay.
accept the order as discussed.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Do you want to do 59 Minot?
Sure.
That's the dock that goes out, it came over the wetland, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working on that, Mario,
Yes,
Mike, Betsy, Tom.
Let's do it.
That is,
That's where you just did that.
that's the big boardwalk over the bordering vegetated wetland. They redid the salt marsh line to address Mario's concerns and make it more in line with the definition of the salt marsh. They put the grading over the boardwalk across the wetland, which is what I wanted to see, because they didn't have that initially. They are going to save, I believe it was a cedar
They are
that they
not
were
going to cut the
proposing to
tree.
take
Delete
down.
tree removal.
They're
Yep.
gonna go over that. They did identify the trenching from the house
Yep.
to the boardwalk, Tom, that you wanted to see.
Yep. Mooring field?
They put the mooring field on there, and we can make a finding regarding Greg's comments.
Yeah, there's some concern about,
Yeah, because it's important to have Greg's comments, because when docks go before the Board of Selectmen, because there's a provision in the zoning bylaw that requires docks to go before the Board of Selectmen for navigational purposes, the Board of Selectmen contact the Conservation Department.
well, they look at our
to-
orders.
Yeah, we send up our orders and Greg's recommendation to them.
Right, and I think our
So-
order, and reflect that.
It should
you know, we
reflect
respect-
Greg's,
We respect his
comments
recommendation,
and-
but this is
yeah.
why.
Yep.
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you for having that discussion, guys.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Hey, Tom.